I mean, there's a very easy answer to that. Smoker lineups, body block, duh. In all seriousness,
it does just come down to raw gunfights, and Sentinels just came up bigger on some of the rounds that they really shouldn't have won, where they were down numbers. And to me, that's what swung this map more than anything else, is just winning in situations they really didn't have any business winning. We got to be a little careful, you know, deciding we're the best region already and rubbing people's noses in it, because just like some of that trash talk came back around to Mitch, in a few days, that might be coming back around to us. So let's...
That shit, man. NA all the way, number 1 and 2. You stick with it, you go with it. I've learned from it, so f you, Mitch. We're going. NA number 1, let's go, cat ears, woo!
What's up, nerds? Welcome to a special edition of Valoranting, of course, a professional ranting show. And it's a special edition because, of course, we're knee-deep in the middle of Masters Reykjavik right now. There's a heck of a lot going on. Joining me today is Vansilli. We'll get to him in a sec. But also, Dream is joining us, and so is Bot. Guys, thank you so much for coming on board. It's a good time to be a fan of good Valorant right now with their first international LAN.
Good time to be a good fan of North American Valorant, is what you mean, because we're winning. I mean, we're winning everything. I don't know if anybody watched today, but like North America number 1, it's already been decided. It only took 2 matches. We're the best. The legacy starts here.
All other regions down horrendous.
Dream, you were the one before the show. You were preaching a bit of moderation here, though. You were reminding us, of course, that there is a lower bracket here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. V1 and Sentinels gave some beatdowns today. I'm not gonna lie, but they still gotta win the event before we can be too satisfied, right?
Small wins, one step at a time. We fucking take these today.
At this point, I'm expecting an all NA winners finals. So that's 2 in the top 3. That's pretty nuts. So I think we can be pretty happy with that. But still, the gold is what matters, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Vansilli's just been telling Porky Pies lies that he's an Australian, because he's like, oh, yeah, guys, sorry, I got this big esports thing happening next week. You know, I got the call up from and right. They're like, yeah, we need you because, you know, we want you on the show. I haven't fucking seen you on the broadcast yet, Vansilli. I thought you just took this seriously to go play golf for 2 days, you prick. What have you been up to?
You know, playing golf, waiting for events to come, and then watching this. And I agree with you, Mitch. I am a fan of NA Valorant today. I can't be a fan of NA Esports whatsoever, because if you're following other esports, unfortunately, it seems as though NACS might be dying again. We just saw some tweets coming out, some players leaving Triumph, and then Ryan Abadir's brother, Cooper, is like, maybe it's time. So maybe it's the time for the switch into Valorant. And there's no better day than today.
Go as far as Freakazoid's brother. That's how deep you're digging for insights on Counter-Strike right now. On a Valorant show.
Look, I'm just saying he's coming to Valorant. There's a possibility he's coming to Valorant, and no better day than today when you're living off the hype of NA just destroying the other regions. Those other regions, period, only meaning EU for now.
You know what? Let's talk a little bit about, of course, a lot of the hype videos coming in, because obviously that's the trophy there. I get the vibe. Have you guys seen The Expanse? It reminds me of like the planet they go to in The Expanse.
Yes.
It's like semi-habitable, but it's
yes.
churning machines.
No spoilers.
There.
No spoilers.
I won't spoil. Dumbledore does die, but I mean, it's a really interesting style for these videos, right?
Motherfucking Snape. Dude, I think the hype video for this is super incredible. I think we talked about the trophy last week when it was when it looked like the one from the Fifth Element, but now that you're saying The Expanse, I can never pass a scene like when they're like it's episode 1 literally, when they're just like naked on the bed floating in the air, but I fall asleep. It's not because I always rewind it.
So it's not because you're sexually active at all. It's just because you like sleeping.
Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. So look. I mean, from the top, guys, you know, we obviously, Bok, you know, you're heavily involved in, you know, in Valorant Esports for, you know, for ages now. We think about like the thematics that we use for sort of challenges, and it kind of hints towards this sort of very, it's not cyberpunky, but very sort of futuristic kind of street feel here, but I feel like they're really starting to embody that with the use of like a lot of these assets and a lot of these videos. I assume this is supposed to be Iceland, this volcanic soil, like Mordor kind of feel, but it's very different to what I've seen, especially because in the game I come from is a bunch of fucking Pixar characters trying to run out, chase each other down and shit, you know?
It does come across very post-apocalyptic, like the world has ended. It kind of like takes you to Ascent where like there's stuff floating in the air and it's like frozen in time. Like you get this like weird dystopian future. We don't really know what's going on. We're still waiting for Riot to explain what that is.
Give me the law.
Who's in purple? Is it Astra in astral form, or is it maybe a new agent? I don't know. Like, you know, when she's Jet's floating in the air and then she's about to go, or it's Reyna that breaks open like it's fucking Avengers.
No, if you remember like the marking that Riot does for Worlds, it's like some indistinct person, right? Could be anyone. It's like you, the challenger, can rise up here and shit post on Twitter about how much better NA is, and you'll find yourself in a seat where Caddy is at one point. You know what I mean? It's this anti. Yeah, look at this. I mean, my guys, and you know what? It's like a Hideo Kojima. Video game.
It does kind of remind me of what was Death Stranding?
Death Stranding, right?
Yeah.
She's going up her nose.
Where's the baby? I'm waiting for the fetus to show up.
There's like a singularity here. I don't know. It's cool. I don't know what it's supposed to imply, but I mean, I know the bloke Daniel Collette who works on a lot of these videos. He was at ESPN in the past. Really great guy, and bringing a really cool vibe to this stuff. Very quickly, excuse me. We're doing a giveaway here in conjunction with Masters. So basically, not enough of you follow us on Twitter, and we need to rectify that. So we're going to give you some free shit. So basically, what you have to do is follow at VALORANTING. Yeah, we got ourselves a Twitter handle. It's pretty sick. The competition post, this very post, hit a like, hit the retweet, and then comment with your favorite play Valorant skin or app. Yeah. So we're gonna after the finals, right? So after the Reykjavik finals, so it's NA and EU regions only, right? $50, £50, €50 gift card. All right. Yeah, especially if you're an EU fan who's down horrendous after this tournament, you can get yourself involved and get yourself some skins. So my favorite skins are Sovereign for sure. I think they need to make Vandal and a Phantom for those skins. But what about you guys?
I get so much heat because I have a Vandal with a gun buddy but no skin. Because unlike Vansilli, I like to keep my money in the bank instead of giving it to Riot for skins that I just can't use. He's got like every expensive set that's ever come out. He just like impulse buys. At this point, I feel like you should just have them like take your debit card and just automatically pull out like $1,000 each month, and then just give you the
direct debit every month, like it's a bill. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, Dream, but I know Vans goes hard in the paint on his skins. What about you?
Yeah. I would say that I definitely overindulge. I have many skins, and I have played exactly 0 ranked games of Valorant in my life. I just have the great skins for the range and for DM. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's all for me. It's a personal thing, you know?
Drip or drown, baby. I know I've spent a fuck ton of money on Valorant skins.
I don't want to know how much.
I don't have any excuse because I have a family that I'm supposed to care for. I'm still spending money on those skins, baby. Hey, let's talk a little bit about these hype videos, right? Finally, we get people in person. And we actually, we get to see like what Riot kind of do with these. This is reminiscent in some senses of like some of the LCS videos. I remember like Double Lift running a stadium or some shit, but I kind of like this. Some people I was talking to today thought it was kind of weird to have them in a boiler room. I mean, obviously, like these guys obviously haven't touched a fucking wrench in their entire life, but it looks cool. I don't know about you. I like this.
I love it, man. I thought it was super cool because it gets away from like the whole, hey, cross your arms and kind of thing, and like
turn your back.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like always super bright and like it looks pretty awkward. But now with this type of like mood that they're showing, the graphic in there, it's blurry here and there, the angles. I think they did a great job actually hyping up this video. Like, look at this. I feel like it's us 4. We could be in this like a fucking hip hop crew, and like it's pretty awesome, man. It brings the hype.
I love that holding Boaster back. That's fucking great. he's like some unchained guy. It's like Boaster of all people. And the one, I think it's a bit like where like Dapper's like wagging his finger at people. You know what? It's dark enough so no one can see that they've all got their fucking arms crossed in the esports pose.
Yes, exactly. Like I like the aesthetic. It does give you like some music video vibes, some like heavily edited vibes. But the big thing is with the moody lighting and the darkness and the fast cuts, not everyone has to be as charismatic as Boaster.
Correct.
People can just be a gamer person and they can make you look cool. So I think it works.
Yeah, it kind of has this vibe like they were setting up team player portraits. They were just getting ready to take the normal pictures, and they accidentally hit record instead of take a picture, and then they took a bunch of acid when they edited. Like you've got like all this like Technicolor and like grinding graphics and chop cuts and all this cool stuff. It comes together pretty nicely for like the motif. Like it goes back to that first video again, where it's like kind of this like weird futuristic, but like more like what the '80s thought the future would look like than today.
Yeah.
It adds some
Absolutely.
personality. It adds some personality because the grin, the shark bite that they did from a Sharks player, the tattoo showing from the other Brazilian player, or was it a Latin America player? Like it just shows that there's a lot of charismatic players and players with personality in our scene right now. That's very fun to like get behind.
It reminds me of like Mugatu trying to brainwash Zoolander. You know? Like, in the background, I just see like relax, don't do it. You know what I mean? Look, like really cool.
Yeah.
Really. Yes. I can't sing too much more of it, otherwise we get copyright stuff. But yeah, so that's really cool. Let's talk about the actual fucking games though, because we kick off with an EMEA versus LATAM matchup, right? Fnatic is the top seed coming out of the EMEA region. People were thinking, speculating, worrying that it would only be Turkish and CIS teams that come out of there. Well, that's not the case. Obviously, Fnatic turns up and go up against, I think for many of us, like a lesser known team, maybe not Dream, because I know that he watches a ton of like sort of LATAM or Brazilian Valorant and stuff like that. But I didn't know a ton about these guys, except there was a player on crew who was a prodigy in Overwatch. His name's Klaus. He's an Argentinian bloke. So I'm thinking, all right, like it's like kind of like Patafan. Like, it's almost like the same one guy from all these regions are just like good at every FPS game, and then turn up and look pretty scary. But let's talk about what we saw here. You know, the first map I think was Haven in that sort of series, and I think we definitely got eased into the competition a little bit, guys. Yeah, it definitely felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect between these two regions and where they were at.
Yeah, definitely. I'll let you guys go first, and I'll chime in after for sure. So, Dream, if you want to go ahead.
I mean, all I've got to say is they won all the pistols and the immediate rounds after, and that's about it. They could not win any other rounds. Fnatic really had their number in the gun rounds. Terrible run for them in the pistols, but yeah, just totally outclassed strategically and just gunplay wise. It felt like in a lot of rounds they just weren't shooting back.
Well, to be fair, they did win one round on Haven.
Yes.
That was it. That was literally it, other than the pistols. They won both pistols on both maps and the anti-eco, but then they only won one actual gun round. Which, if we're being honest, this is kind of like what a lot of people, I think, expected coming into the day. I think a lot of people thought Fnatic's just going to crush. And then when it happened, everyone was going, oh man, EU's the best. Like, all it took was watching like 2 gun rounds, and everyone was like, EU's #1, NA sucks. And I'm like, NA's not even playing. What are we talking about? Well, technically they are, because LATAM, but, you know, geography, let's not get into that one. But
Sure, okay.
true, like,
I
they just could not do well at all. I mean, you look at even the stats and just like per player, they didn't even have like one guy who was like really stepping up. Like, everyone was just struggling. I guess you could make arguments for like 1 or 2 players having a decent performance, but it was honestly brutal.
Yeah, it was. When you're looking at the first map on Haven, actually, it's we commended crew of saying that they were evolving with the meta, because hey, they're following like Team Liquid strats, they're following Team Liquid setups, but they're also changing things a bit with Fnatic, for example, because they're bringing an Astra instead of a Brimstone. But then at the same time, you're looking at their setup on the defense. You see what you see on the minimap in blue? That's literally what it was for 12 rounds. They've never really adapted it to anything at all versus Fnatic, and even though they had 2 players on the A side with that Sky and the so BNJ and Nagzet, sorry, as a Sage, they were getting punished by Durka every single round. Durka could go with like a smoked across to block the flash or whatever, and he was just dominating him every single time. So they had no answer to it. They didn't stack enough. I mean, Dream, you talked about it with myself as well. It was like they should have stacked A side X amount of times, and they just never did it.
Yeah, and you can tell that that was Fnatic's game plan. They used to run the Raze on this map and put a lot more emphasis on mid and garage control using the Raze utility. But instead, they went back to the Jet, and Durka is just running it down A lobby every round. They just have no answer, so Fnatic's just going to keep doing it until you can prove you can deal with it. And obviously, that never happened, right? No matter how many ultimates they had, it didn't matter. Fnatic was just clutching out the rounds. So,
yeah.
It seemed to me that Crew would happy, like they thought it was sufficient to sort of bang up a Viper wall on the A site and then start to cheat over towards B. And every single round, like Fnatic just lean into it a little bit more. Like Durka obviously was, I think, named Day One's MVP for that performance, but they just wait till the freaking the Viper wall drops down, and they just like Durka smokes himself inside Cloudburst, and they just sort of hit the site here. And it happened over and over and over again. Fnatic get so many rounds just with two players just inching more, like just taking these a slow approach towards the A site. I almost feel like Crew like overestimate the deterrent factor of the Viper wall here.
Yeah, they were missing a lot. I think even with the walls coming up, they weren't really using it for like conditioning and stuff like that too. But it's really hard to get a footing in the matchup as well when you're already trailing so far behind. So even trying to do any type of conditioning with the Viper wall in the beginning is going to be very difficult when you're already trailing behind by like at least 8 to 10 rounds, right? So you really had to just put it all up, put the wall up, try to rush in, and that also didn't work.
So let's talk. Let's talk Haven here a little bit more. Actually, there's not much more to say, really. I think we kind of covered these last few rounds. If it's 13-5, right? And you know, we talked about only one gun round was sort of won there, so pretty sort of one-sided stuff. Let's we carry on and talk about map 2 a little bit here because it is a similar situation that we get here. I think map 2 was
Icebox.
Whose pick was it though?
That was Fnatic's pick.
I think
that was
Fnatic's
pick. Yeah. Crew picked Haven.
Yeah. So that's actually quite surprising. Well, not necessarily surprising. I think it makes sense that Crew wanted to take Haven because they've practiced so much with that composition. Again, talking about how they take a couple of strats from EU but never adapt to it. But then Fnatic, we'll talk about it later, but they picked Icebox today as well versus Sentinels, right? So Fnatic definitely wanted to show that they had a little deeper of a map pool before, because when they played against Liquid, they didn't look too good. I think at some point they had or was it Split that they had triple duelists? Anyways, they weren't playing that well versus Liquid at some point, and they wanted to bring the practice in. And I think this was a good way to bring it into this matchup. Again, it wasn't that much of a big challenge versus Crew. I find that Crew was lacking as well in terms of their not necessarily agent composition, because he was perfect. They had a Viper, they had a Sage. It's just the execution again wasn't panning out in their favor.
Yeah, they weren't able to prevent anyone from getting the bomb down, really. Fnatic was happy to push up into B or push up into A and be in position to plant the bomb, but then just not plant it and just sit there with 5 people with their guns out, waiting for some sort of re-aggression or some sort of peak. Just take the free kills. If there's 40 seconds on the clock, they'll sit on the site for 40 seconds and just take the free kills before they put the bomb down. They weren't able to get info on other areas of the map. There weren't reflanks coming around behind Fnatic, so they just had no pressure on them. They just get to sit there on crossfires on the site and wait for that re-aggress.
Play duck hunt. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, even the pistol round and the anti-ego in that first half, that was 2 defuse round wins for Crew. Like, they let them get site control. Yeah. That was like, Fnatic just basically, it's the same thing as Haven. They just ran over them. They didn't really have anything slowing them down. You know, they were kind of leaning on the Viper utility to try to stop them, and it just wasn't enough, because Fnatic was kind of like, that's cute and all, I'm just going to blow right past it, and then here I am right next to you, and I know that I'm way better at aiming than I think you are, so I'm just going to go for it. And clearly it worked, because Durka ends up with 21 and 15, 396 ACS. Like, he crushed them. And it was basically the same thing that we saw on Haven replaying again on this second map.
Are Crew just over, like, relying on post-plant sort of scenarios here, or just like their post-plant utility? Because you feel like teams have been doing this for ages, right? Trying to, using Viper and Killjoy in the post plant.
Yeah.
Does it look like they think they can just sort of sit back off the side, or sit in sort of safe positions and just wait for them to try and tickle it? Because they didn't look like they were really Yeah, they couldn't stand up in the post pile at all. Like
Mhm.
it was just running. Fnatic just walk on the side and swing them.
It was kind of weird too, because even if you look back at that last replay, I know the wall was in blue because it's a defender wall from Fnatic playing on defense. But I think Dream, we were looking at this matchup and we're like, wait, this is like the same wall that they're trying to do on the offense. And I was asking you that question. I was like, are they actually trying to pixel plant into the A site at some point where it could get spammed easily because there's only one spot to look at? So that's why I said like the execution for how they wanted to play the attack for Crew was limited because it still had some question marks where you couldn't really try to figure out what they were trying to do with the Viper wall, what type of conditioning, what type of hits you would do with that onto these A sites. I mean, maybe with the recon dart from Silva, but it was definitely questionable at that point where even, I mean, you're playing retake because Fnatic's just running over you at the same time too. You have no choice.
Yeah, one thing when they ended up on their T side, when they were using Viper, they would put the wall down really early in the round. And the majority of their T side rounds, they actually went to the site that they didn't put their Viper wall. Where in both NA and EU, the meta has changed a little bit where you put that Viper smoke down in mid and you don't commit the Viper wall early, and then you can go back and forth from site to site and kind of juke people out, deny info. And then when you want to commit, you put that Viper wall down. But
like
they were putting that Viper wall down in the first 10, 15 seconds of the round and trying to use it to fake pressure, but they never went in and pushed into B main or deep into A, and Fnatic just had people standing in front of the wall. So they're
just
like, the
there.
fake doesn't do anything. It doesn't
And the wall
deny
comes
any
down
info.
eventually anyway. Keep it up all round.
But even if
that got exploited on Haven, like Durka just waits for the wall to drop and walk on the side.
Yeah, and even if it drops down, they're like, oh well, there's nobody here. Like they didn't have to rotate at all for Fnatic throughout the matchup. So
are these guys screwed in the lower bracket? They go up against Sharks on the 26th. So I mean, that's happening tomorrow. What do you guys think?
I think that'll actually be a good match. I think that's kind of hard to call right now.
Yep, I agree.
I think it'll be a close game, good match, different adjective. I think it's going to be kind of sloppy. If I'm being honest, I was not particularly impressed with either team. I actually came into yesterday thinking like, oh, Sharks is going to win because like I learned long ago, you never root against Brazil, especially in the opening events. Like they always end up surprising a lot of people. Now they surprised me with how lackluster they were, so it wasn't exactly the surprise I was expecting. But they did pick up map 1 over NuTurn, so I guess there's that. But I think that in comparison, those two teams, I think Sharks is the better team. I think it could be close, but I don't think it's going to be like particularly great Valorant. I think it's going to be really bizarre. We might see like those kind of games where it's like back-to-back blowouts, and then a third map is like a coin toss. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think it'll definitely be sloppy, and it's probably going to come down to firepower. And I think Sharks has the advantage there. So yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, I actually have the opposite. I have Crew actually potentially taking that series because yes, Sharks is fast. Sorry,
I think I'd love to know why. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I was gonna say like Sharks are very aggressive, right? I think there was a stat going out where they try to get into sites like maybe 30 seconds in, but now maybe it plays a little bit more into the play style of Crew, for example, just because Crew at the same time have played very similar styles against this very I don't know, but they played they played against very similar styles in their region already, so they already could be expecting like this very aggressive play style that would come out from Sharks, and they could now potentially stop it with now the composition that they're building in. So I think maybe a map like Haven, where I think it was Sharks that looked pretty good on that map, but the rest of the map pool, I think it's still going to favor Crew because Sharks in their map pool is not that deep.
We'll get to talk about Sharks in a bit. I think I just would like to see Crew keep their options open a little bit more with how they use that Viper utility. They commit it so early in the round, and then it just doesn't. It seems like they're just following like a flow chart of like things to do. And they don't allow themselves any bandwidth to adapt to what their opponents are doing. So I mean that's another level on top of the first lesson is okay, we need to use Viper. The second lesson is we need to know why we use Viper, or it requires a probably deeper understanding of their role inside those compositions. So we need a bit more reactivity from them. Let's move on and have a look at our other opening match. One that ended up being quite a lot closer, right? V1 comes into Iceland with pretty low expectations, honestly, especially with with Whippy being such a key part of them, getting here in the first place and his Viper play just being so oppressive, especially on Haven, looks really good. Jammies comes into this team, and it's not a sort of totally well-known player, as we know him as for his time on Beast Coast, but you've got to be a little bit more in the weeds in the NA scene to sort of know who he is, just seeing the name. And Crazy Racoon, they beat Absolute Jupiter in the Japanese qualifiers as the team that features Munchkin of previous Overwatch fame, a South Korean player, as is Medusa. So again, I think people going into this match maybe expect V1 to be the stronger team here, but we get a little bit more than we bargained for, perhaps.
I don't know. I feel like we have made the mistake, and Alex, you were there when we did it, of underestimating version 1 literally every time they play. I think this is something we did really badly during the regional finals, when pretty much every match we're like, this is where the run ends. It ends here. Like, the Cinderella story is over. And they just kept winning. And like, I don't think anyone really expected that. And then they make it here and everyone discounts and says, like, it's a fluke. There's no way they're going to keep winning. And they pick up, a win, a 2-0. It was close for sure. It wasn't easy. But I do think that Crazy Racoon is probably a little bit better than people maybe gave them credit for coming into this. They potentially could have won map 1. There was definitely an opportunity to go to overtime there for Crazy Racoon. But version 1, I think this is just kind of their story. This is what they do. They come in, everyone underestimates them, and then they win, and everyone who was underestimating them was like, they're going to lose next time. It's okay. It's just
why
like the
is
story
that?
of the team.
Why is that hanging over this team's head? Is it because they're not Sentinels?
It's because they don't have that brand like Sentinels has. Sentinels has like big players, storied careers, quote unquote storied careers for some of them. Obviously, there's a little bit more brand power behind what Sentinels has done, and obviously Sentinels has done more in Valorant than version 1 did. Version 1 struggled when they first formed as a team. They were really floundering about during the early stages of Challengers and VCT. And when they made it into the regional finals, even that was like, okay, this is probably where the run ends here. Like, I'm surprised they even made it this far. And it was like them and Cloud9 that were the two surprising storylines from that regional finals. Sure. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of us expected Cloud9 to be here, not version 1. I think both teams would have played well, but I'm still impressed. Like, every time they play, I get more and more impressed. The fact that they did this with a stand-in and they win 2-0 is pretty impressive. And they continue to improve as they play in Iceland, which is kind of scary for the teams they have to play against.
One thing that I think is really interesting about their match versus Crazy Racoon is I'm pretty confident they were sandbagging Ascent. They ran their old strats from regional finals with literally no changes. They ran everything the exact same. And when they played Ascent today, they had a different comp and a totally different playbook. I think they did not respect Crazy Racoon. I think they wanted to hide strats, and I think they wanted to play into their narrative as the
underdog
team that's not to be taken seriously. And I think it worked. But that's my takeaway, particularly from Ascent, because when we were watching that match yesterday, Vance, we were literally like, they're doing the exact same stuff. And we're like, okay, maybe they didn't change their strats because they were just really worried about being able to integrate a stand-in and teach them the playbook. So maybe they aren't able to create a whole bunch of new set plays. But no, they were able to create new set plays around a new comp. And a very different play style as well. The Phoenix is very play style defining on Ascent in particular. And getting Zelsis off that hero and having him play a role more similar to what Whippy was doing on the Killjoy on this map was really interesting to see. But I'm very impressed that they had the confidence to go into this and basically say, we're going to hide strats and run stuff that's 4-6 weeks old that we know that our opponents have watched, and we're just going to beat them anyways and save the real strats for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. There was some question marks going into that matchup for me too as well for version 1. It's like, how is Jammies going to do plugging into Whippy, for example, right? And he was actually the first kill of the series. So for him to be able to get the first kill on top of that, I think he was even against Munchkin too. It's like, okay, well, at least the jitters is out there. The confidence is reigning together. That plug-in play of getting him instead of Whippy, or putting him where Whippy plays. Let's see how that chemistry goes and get that stress out of the way, get that pressure out of the way. And then now, again, we'll talk about today later, but even on that first map versus Crazy Racoon, after that, I mean, when it first started though, it was like, oh crap, things are not looking too well for Crazy Racoon. For version 1, because I think it was like a 6-1 scoreline at some point. So for version 1 to say, look, we're gonna underestimate Crazy Racoon and just play what we normally play and see how that goes. It was playing with fire, right? Because it still ended up being a very close series where it's like, oh crap, we're still going to underestimate version 1 moving forward. But on the first map, at least after that pause, Penny also started lighting up a little bit more too. He was one of those guys who were a little bit more quiet at the beginning, and then look at him today.
Yeah.
What is the game plan for Crazy Raccoons in this particular series, right? Because we see them come out. They've got the Raze Jet. They've got the Astra involved here. It's a fairly close game, but like I don't know if you can't really say that they were sandbagging for this game.
I'll
Sure,
go first.
Okay,
Go ahead, Dream. Go ahead.
From
Grass
what
first,
I've
yeah.
seen of Crazy Racoon in general and leading up to this specific event, they're a very kind of slow build on their T side. They want to play slow early, not necessarily default and spread out, but just deny info early and then play really explosive. Munchkin has some of the best satchel movement, period. And he uses that to close the gap, and he goes around corners. He has crazy air strafes. You wouldn't believe that he's an Overwatch player. He seems like a Counter-Strike KZ god or something. Absolutely ridiculous movement. But they really like to play that more explosive style, and that is also why, I mean, we'll see this later on in the tournament, the Omen versus Astra on Ascent in particular, but they play around that Omen blind as well to create a bunch of space and enter. They want a drone to clear the close angles, blind to clear the back angles, and do big, heavy execs onto sites and overpower you with just speed. It works when it works. I mean, sometimes you're just going to run people over, but V1 has the individual skill to be able to withstand that, win enough of their duels under pressure there, and come out with the series.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. Sorry, Mitch. Just to add on, because the explosion from playing off that Omen is like the paranoia, most usually in the A site, right? And then the thing is, when you look at that series, the reason why I say it almost bit them in the ass for version 1, there had to be, I think, even 2 different clutch situations, right? One where like it was a 1 versus 1 in the end for Rion versus Effie's, I think, or it was. No, it was the Killjoy player. Yeah, it was
Jammies.
I forgot. Yeah, it was Jammies
with
at
like
that
14
point.
HP. Yeah,
Exactly. So he put the turret up. The turret didn't spot him. He got killed. We didn't know if he was going to stick over to the spike. So there was some very, very close rounds that had to come into clutches in the end on the other side for version 1 too to be able to pull out with the first map. Again, it's a BO3 at that point, so you're kind of happy at that point when you're not that happy if you lose, but a loss means you could still carry it over into the 3 maps, right? If they're hiding strats, it's like, hey, we could pull it out a little bit later if we're facing like loss, but at the same time, it worked in their favor for the clutches, and they got the round.
I mean, obviously we move on to Icebox here in our second map, and this is one where Effie's actually shows up with some really big moments, kind of clutches out a little bit. Obviously, is not topping the scoreboard, but it's a big run of rounds to begin with for V1. Their attacking side looks pretty darn watertight here. But we start to get some more sort of, I guess, some more nail-biting moments at times here. Is I think what Crazy Racoon, they win the pistol, right, and then they crack back after losing a gun round. So it starts to look pretty competitive, and you get moments like this. Like Effie's just has to just go in and get the job done here. It looked really good.
It was so close at that point. Again, another clutch situation that had to come in.
and that was a pistol. That was an eco coming in. That would have been huge. That really would have upset momentum. I love watching Sova mains on this map. Alex, you and I have talked about it before, just how fun Sova mains can be to watch on the map. I don't know what it is about it, but something we watch some of the best games for Sovas on this map. Players like Gangsta really come to mind. We've talked about it plenty of times in the past. But even though he wasn't necessarily stepping up, he has big rounds. But you got to start looking at Penny because, you know, Penny, this is where Penny stepped up. And this is where Penny started to like really cement himself. And it carried over into today, which you guys will talk about later. But Penny ended up topping the scoreboard for the team. Penny was so good for version 1. And, you know, again, I feel like this was a weird comp for Crazy Racoon. I don't love the lack of Viper. Just in, like, the current meta, like, come on. Like, Viper is so broken, if we're being honest. Like, Viper is broken. And if you're not playing Viper, especially on this map, I feel like you're missing so much.
Yeah, agreed. Icebox has got to be the map that you would argue she's the most required, right?
Yeah.
Particularly on T side. Getting onto that B site is so difficult without that refreshing Viper utility, right? There's so much stall, getting spammed on the boxes. It's just so important to have. I do think they did better than I expected on their T side. Obviously, on CT, they were not really putting up much of a defense, but they were able to get some rounds on their T side. And V1 was really being forced to play like the retake almost every round. They were not able to do kind of what their sort of signature style is, which is taking quick fights, fighting you at off tempo moments, running through smoke, stuff like that. They weren't finding those timings, and Crazy Racoon was consistently getting the bomb down. And that is when V1 has to, kind of put those clutch shoes on and come up big. I'm interested to see if this was also a map where maybe they were hiding strats.
I was thinking the same thing.
Phoenix is a comfort pick for Zelsis, but definitely a very uncommon pick overall on Icebox. Not super strong. He's shown, obviously, later on in the tournament that he's very comfortable flexing to the Killjoy role, which is a much more common and I would say more valuable agent on Icebox. So there's potential that if we see them back on Icebox later in the tournament, they'll end up running a different comp. We'll see some different strategies and maybe a different look from them in general, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I think Crazy Racoon for me was another old school strat, right? No Viper, but at least like bringing a Sage, for God's sakes, at least to try to get a wall plant or something like that to make things a little bit easier for you on the attacker side. But like Dream said, they had a couple of better rounds here on the attacker side. They looked better on the attacker side than they did on the defender side. But again, it's that double duelist with Omen that really helps to enable that type of entry, that type of aggressive playstyle that you want from a double duelist comp. But as we always had that big question mark throughout the whole event, getting in prior to the event is like which meta seems to be working the most, right? This double duelist comp that still could work hasn't been really the comp that's been pulling it out so far as we're going through the bracket.
Well, it just looks so. I mean, that last round that we saw there, I think I'm pretty sure V1 had just lost the last couple of rounds. They're on like pistols and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they have a Viper's Pit on their B side, and they know that Crazy Raccoons are committed to it. So, but Crazy Raccoons have to walk up and try and plant on that B site without a Viper ball into a Viper's Pit. And you can see that like all of V1 just group up like that. Eventually, they do lose the Viper, but they just push from like underneath tube because there's just you can't get a safe plant. You see Vanity just swing with the Sheriff, knowing that someone is trying to plant the spike at that time. Like the round stretched out so much, and it feels like Crazy Raccoon just make life so much harder for themselves rather for the way that their composition played out on their map. It seemed like it didn't matter if there's a Phoenix or not. I mean, Neth doesn't spray through a blaze wall and ends up losing the round as a result of it there. So it was able to get them some value at the very least. Let's crack on. Obviously, those were our two first games. I think this. I mean, we were intrigued by those first two games, but this next one was huge. And we had NuTurn going up against Sharks, right? Two of the regions I think that were considered the most scary coming into this event, especially we're talking about Sharks who comes from Brazil. Scary region already. The teams look insane. The fact that teams like Game Landers and stuff didn't make it already makes people sit up in their chair and go, wait a minute, like these guys are okay. This is a serious region. And NuTurn, well, they might have been Vision Strikers, you know what I mean? And then they take down one in the final. Expectations, suffice to say, are high. Now, for those that maybe like me included, by the way, for those that maybe don't know what the optimal map pool is, I was kind of confused to see how this played out because NuTurn banned Icebox. That was like they sort of ban that straight away. I think that this says that Sharks ban it, but VLR.GG says NuTurn do. Either way, we get the first map and it's Haven, and it's a bizarre thing to watch. Watching this, I'm thinking, wait, South Korea suck. Like, what on earth is going on in this map? It seems like they're really slow. They really didn't know how to sort of push some of their advantages. I mean, Solo's not getting a whole lot done with the breach here as well, which is obviously not something we see all the time. What are you guys thinking when you're watching this first map? Because I'm like, wait a minute, either Brazil are really good or like South Korea are just like giga overrated.
I think Sharks for me was they had their best chance on Haven. So getting Haven in this map rotation is, I think it's not. It wasn't necessarily going to be like a one-sided affair for Sharks. I thought that NuTurn could have put a better fight, but I also think this is the nature of like the Sharks matches in general. In that region in Brazil, when Sharks are playing, and they always ban, I think, Split as a map, always seeing like Haven, Ascent, and maybe a bit of Bind in there too. It's always like 13-2, 13-3, or for either side. If they lose a map, they lose badly. If they win a map, they win greatly. And I think that the testament of that first map was just Sharks being able to, I think it's the land jitters, to be honest. NuTurn looked a lot better in the two other maps, but the first map, they didn't look at all like having any chemistry whatsoever for the Korean team.
This is something, though, that we've seen from Brazilian teams in the past, like looking at like games like CS, where they were just like super momentum driven, like very momentum driven early on. It took them time to like find stability. If they were going to win one round, they were going to win like 7. They didn't just win that one round. But, you know, there were some good things to take away. Like, obviously, this round was really fun to watch, and it felt like NuTurn had like some decent set pieces. They just never really ended up in scenarios where they could use them all that well.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. I mean, I am a little confused as to how the map draft went, because in my mind, NuTurn's comp where they skip a Sentinel and kind of replace it with Breach, when you think about the traditional comp, isn't super strong on Haven.
Yeah.
And then Sharks ended up picking Bind, but NuTurn is known in Korea as the kings of Bind.
Yeah.
So I felt like that. I was confused there, to be honest with you. But yeah, it just felt like they didn't have that stopping power on their CT side, that ability to kind of use some Sentinel utility for info or to really lock down a site and be able to stack other places. And they just had to rely on running out and trying to get kills. And they weren't able to hold down the site outside of situations like this, where you just are relying on true hero plays and winning back-to-back 1v1s and not just playing off of your teammates and stuff like that. So just not able to do it consistently here.
I was not opposed, though, to NuTurn not having a Sentinel on this map. Like, I know that maybe it's unorthodox today, because when you look at the lineup, the agent composition, a Killjoy seems to be very, very strong on this map now, especially on the utility they get put towards that B site. But solo playing on a Breach really reminds me of, like, FaZe taking a strat out of NuTurn's book on this very map. When Zachary got away from playing a Cypher and then started playing Breach on the map, and he was anchoring on a site as a Breach, and it was like, holy crap, this schmeaging is working very well. And that's the definition of when that came out, when they brought a non-Sentinel composition and used Breach, because Breach's ult for the retake could still be very, very good. And on a map like Haven, when you have a Sentinel, for example, it's very common to play a retake even at that point. If they're hitting towards the A site, you're playing Heaven, you're trying to get information. If they're getting into the site, now you have a lockdown, for example, for a retake. Well, this time you got flashes and a rolling thunder to try to get things going. But Sharks, from their aggressive playstyle, I think that's how it storms over, where you can't set them up.
Yeah, they don't get to play retake, though.
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing. Like, they're playing defense. Like, I was watching them just trying to see how they were planning to get, like, value out of the Breach on defense. But every time they tried to get info, to get Breach to set up for, like, some early play, you fucking die.
Yeah, hello.
They just lose, like, 2 or 3 people on A side, like early in the round. Like, Sharks are so aggressive. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to play, like, some sort of proactive Breach against a team that just pushes sites against you. Yeah. So it feels like it started, like, the rounds were just, like, they're not very suspenseful, because 30 seconds in, it's a 5v2 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
that's another Brazilism. You know, we watch Brazilian teams play, and they're just super aggressive. They love that, like, in-your-face style of play. But it's also what can cost you a series, and it's why you can lose many rounds in a row, because even when you're winning rounds, you might lose 3 players in those early engagements, and then you're like getting by with a 1v1, your credits are in the toilet, you don't have much money to buy, so you're just screwed for the round that follows.
So speaking of which, the Kings of Bind get to play Bind, and it looks like a completely different story straight off the bat, right? NuTurn start on the offensive side here, and they look really very comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is easily the best map for this style of composition, where you want to skip the Sentinel. Bind is probably the map where it's most forgiving to skip out on that on the defensive side, because of the lack of a mid and the ability to kind of turtle sites, and how getting information proactively on CT side isn't quite as important. And if you remember back to when FaZe used to run this style, Bind was one of their most successful maps.
Correct.
And you are right to bring up that connection. Baby Bay has actually said that they took a bunch of their strats and this comp from NuTurn. That is why they started playing this, right? So you do see a lot of the Smeeg. Obviously, they FaZe kind of took it and made it their own and amped certain parts of the style up. But you see a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses, and I think that was just on display here. Super comfortable map for NuTurn, and I think they could play Bind against some other teams in the tournament that play a more, meta comp with the Viper that might be a little harder to deal with. But Sharks is one of those teams. Most of the Brazilian teams actually have been skipping Viper on this map. Vikings is one of the only teams that does play Viper on Bind. They are actually very, very good at Bind. But I think that NuTurn is going to continue to be able to look very good on this map against the teams that are not extremely, extremely prepared, because their composition is just really unique.
I feel like when we saw FaZe adapt this sort of breach with the Jet, it was like a lot of times Zachary said that he was trying to play off or set up Baby Bay, right? He would like double updraft, and then there'd be like a flashpoint, and they'd just try and like just storm through long A here. Are NuTurn trying to set up Allow primarily here, or is Solo's influence sort of being spread a little bit more in this early round?
I think it was spread a little bit more too. I didn't see a lot of like Allow, and like I didn't see Solo sticking to Allow that many times too. I think even sometimes he was split across the map. He was trying to hold B on his own on the attacker side too, just to try to hold pushes going forward. So just playing towards like hookah at that point too. So they were just trying to waste utility at the front side or at the beginning, kind of like what Dream was saying before. It's like, hey, you're playing kind of slow, you're trying to bait utility, then you explode kind of inside right after, right? So I feel that was the play style here for NuTurn that worked very well, where compared to FaZe, when Zachary was setting up Baby Bay, they were hyper aggressive on defender side, like flash and dash outside of Fountain from long B at that point too. And you didn't see that from NuTurn. They seemed a little bit more cautious in their ways, and that's their play style, because Solo wants to know who's setting up where, how they're setting up, how are they pushing, and he micro adapts every single round, where thankfully they didn't need to do that much into this map because they looked very comfortable in this map.
Okay, this is the layman speaking here, because I just don't get to catch enough NuTurn games. I love, by the way, that everybody on the Masters broadcast, every time it comes up, they love reminding people that they do VOD review. Is
that what happened?
Cast was like, wow, I might VOD review. Oh, shut the fuck up. Well, you're expected to watch VODs, you motherfuckers. All right?
I am noting that right now to not say it tomorrow.
It's right underneath time and time again.
You'll have some backwater Overwatch cast to, spew vitriol about you on a show. Come on, who cares? But explain this to me. Do NuTurn really play Viper a ton? Because we don't see it in this series, right? We go, map 3 is what Ascent, and this is what's remaining. So these guys is this breach reliance, is it outdated, or does it have a place in sort of the international metagame right now, where everyone's really playing for these post plants?
I think we're gonna find out. I think we're about to see it limit tested. I think it's also going to depend a lot upon the matchup, right? We talk about them being the king of Bind. Yeah, we talk about them being the king of Bind in Korea. They're going to be playing V1. V1 is not a team that super focuses on their Bind. I would love to see a team like NuTurn match up against a team like Fnatic, right? Both known as being the strongest Bind teams in their regions, to really see a clash of styles. But I am super interested, because the flash and dash aggressive on CT style used to be very meta in EU. And even before the Viper buffs, that fell out of favor on Bind. EU was adopting that very early, using Viper to kind of carve up the map and deny breach some of those flash angles. And they're really good at just saying, hey, if you're going to try and be aggressive early in the round, we're just going to have someone play anti-flash and then just peek you or get the trade every time, right? And that's why NuTurn has evolved, and they aren't as aggressive on that CT side. The question is, are they going to be able to make mid-round plays with Viper denying so many of those flash angles, right? And that's what we'll have to see. If they have creative solutions to that and teams aren't prepared, they've definitely got a shot to show maybe a niche counter to what's the accepted meta on the map right now.
I mean, even the Jet pick on Bind feels like an outlier. It's not something we see many teams do. Jet is not the most common pick on the map. It just doesn't really work for a lot of teams. There's a few teams in North America that I know really rely on Jet on the map. XSET's one that stands out, but it's just kind of feels awkward, feels ham-fisted, like it's not designed to work well. And again, you really just got to point your finger at Viper right now and be like, how can you not use the agent? Like, just the flexibility it gives you in post plants, and we saw that actually today in the version 1 series. Just like how good Viper can be on an annoyance level. Like you set that spike down and then you just run away. It's like the Ron Popeil of strats. Just set it and forget it. You don't even have to play the site. You can just force them to run around like chickens with their heads cut off and drop that utility, and they can't do anything to stop it.
Sharks get no kills in the first 5 rounds of Ascent. This is obviously this is the remaining map, so this is what was just sort of left of the pool here. But I mean, we saw the comps there. Obviously, we know that NuTurn aren't trying to to do anything funky with Viper in general. But this is pretty. I'm watching this. I'm like, man, these guys, they're struggling. This is really not. Look at this. Look at how much like time you're just buying. Like there's like a Killjoy. Yeah, I mean that's getting blown up. Like the lockdown. Sharks look really awkward trying to get in, and Perry's just sitting in corners with all this Astra utility. He's just ruining them.
Yeah. I forgot who said on the desk. I'd like to say it was Esports Doug, but he was saying how NuTurn had more Prime Gaming flawless than Sharks had kills on that first half. So it was, or at least before that pause came out. So it was actually quite crazy. It was like, wow, is this what it's come down to? Like I said, for Sharks looked very, very good on Haven, and then suddenly just fell apart because their map pool might not be as deep. I know they play a lot of Ascent in their region too for Brazil, but I guess they weren't ready to match like a playstyle of NuTurn where, when you're accustomed to always playing and hitting W, and you're going to try that and not respect how your opponents are currently playing and try to switch your playstyle a bit, then it could bite you in the ass. And it definitely did at this point, man. It was very, very one-sided. There was no answer for Sharks at that point, too. And NuTurn, they just ran away with this one.
Sharks don't play Astra as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was thinking the same thing.
Astra's impact.
That's the only map, I think.
That's a very common thing in Brazil as well. So, for example, Vikings does play Astra on Bind, but they don't play it on Ascent. The Brazilian teams really prefer Omen on Ascent, and the reasoning behind that, at least from what I've been told, is they like the Omen blind for the fast tempo. But in my opinion, right, and this is obviously coming from the NA perspective, the Astra being able to use her utility at the very start of the round is so good at denying those high tempo plays. And as you could see, what NuTurn was able to do is have so many rotations of cooldowns and such good protocols for stalling and allowing rotations to come in, or allowing pushes and flanks to come in to stop a lot of these early hits, or even these 20, 30 seconds into the round site execs. And that's, to me, what made me the most hopeful for NuTurn's chances in this tournament. Obviously, they looked really good on Bind. They played their kind of tried and true trademark style. But to see them be able to have a very different style that's about being super methodical, having clean protocols, rotating all of their utility, trading, and playing that style that's a little more common in NA and EU, being able to show that they have that gear makes me think that they have a chance to do some interesting things in this bracket.
I had a lot of people seeing some sort of power rankings. A lot of people sort of have, NuTurn 6th, 7th. Like, they're not really all that bullish on them. I think when they compare them to some of these Brazilian teams, especially Vikings, like, they're not that excited about their prospects. I mean, where did you guys stand on that? Because I think, we saw like really great fundamentals and really excellent sort of maneuvering from NuTurn in their matches. But I think a lot of people weren't blown away by their firepower. Where do we stand on them now? Because they go up against they go against V1, for Christ's sake. And it's pointed out, and Watersheller here mentions it, that that Haven boogeyman that people think they have is probably more just to do with land nerves than like a hole in their map pool. The amount of games that these guys have to play, right? You feel like that's probably not an issue for them. But have these guys risen or fallen in your personal power rankings based on what we've seen so far as they go into a game against V1? It's only one game, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, for me, NuTurn, I think they still stay pretty much where I predicted them to be, maybe around that 4th or 5th with Vikings still. And the reason why is because I still believe and suggest his like high headshot percentage that he had going into this event, where he could still have it. Lakia being a very good player for the team, for NuTurn, and I think he's that type of player that could put those 2Ks, those 3Ks, and if you look at their aim, it's actually not that bad. It's snappy, good crosshair placement. Solo's very good for his age as well. I still think that they have very good upset potential because as you had question marks for NuTurn in the first map, after the other two maps, it's like, okay, this kind of makes sense. It still makes sense of how we predicted for them to play.
I would personally say they've overperformed my expectations in the one set just on the level of play that I saw, but they have moved down in my power rankings because I did not previously have V1 above them. And I think it is clear that V1 should be above them at this point. So I think that, you know, it's kind of a unfortunate situation that they're performing pretty well, but I think that they still won't be able to end up placing super high in the tournament just because the top is very stacked, in my opinion.
Sure,
I think they are going to be fighting for that 4th, 5th, 6th area, and how that shakes out is it's gonna come down to performance on the day. But I mean, they could definitely punch up to 4th easily, I think.
I mean,
They do have tomorrow off, right? They have tomorrow off. They're not playing until the 27th.
I'm pretty sure.
So the other upper semi-final happens tomorrow with the 2 lower bracket games, and then
they get to study.
That's kind of huge.
Yep. They definitely get to study them.
Especially if we're talking about V1 sandbagging and whatnot, maybe having to show what they actually had against Liquid. Yeah, how about this, by the way? Solo, 33 years of age. You love to see it. I'm only 29. You don't feel like there's hope for me? You're not as a player, but maybe it's something else in my life. But that's kind of wild. The age difference between Solo and these shots.
And I even think there's Perry in there too. Perry's in that photo as well. So that was like him with Glow as well back then when they were playing in that old school lineup. But just to get back to what Dream was saying, I mean, at that point, Dream, I mean, I guess version 1 kind of came up, but if you already had version 1 and Sentinels at number 1 and 2, then you wouldn't have that issue. Vikings would still be at the same spot. I mean, NuTurn would still be at the same spot.
So you have them above either one of the EU teams or Vikings?
I mean, hot take now. If you asked me if you asked me before MitchMan came onto our show, then I had Sentinels, Fnatic, and Liquid pretty much in the top 3. But after MitchMan fucking came on, fuck that, dude. Sentinels, version 1, number 1 and 2 all the way. I've been sticking to that the whole time. I've been watching more VODs too. Like, I've been watching VODs, man. And then version 1 looks good, you know? So
fucking sick. I'm glad you're watching VODs, man. That's sick. Anyone else watch any VOD watchers? Mod check. I mean, yeah. I'm interested to hear what Mitch has to say on the other side of this. I'm interested though. I'm quite curious, fans, to see how your prediction plays out or how you feel like NuTurn sort of sit after what we've seen today. Just a reminder, everyone, we're doing a giveaway because we're trying to get you to freaking click follow on our damn Twitter page. It's that easy. We're now going to incentivize y'all to do that as well. So this is the tweet. Not hard to find. It's probably pinned by this point. Again, so got to follow us on Valoranting so you see all the little clips of me just screaming nonsense into my camera every now and then. Like that post, retweet that post, and comment with your favorite Valorant skin. Mine was Sovereign. We talked about it a little bit at the start of the show. If you missed that, I mean, it's already the most substantive part of what we talked about, so that's fine. NA and EU only, right? $50, £50, 50 euros, 50 Shimolians, whatever. What's the Sims currency? I don't know anymore. It's a gift card. So get involved in that one. Bok, sadly, we're going to lose you because you actually have real life, obligations. Kind of wild
things.
But I want to know. I want your preds, man, for tomorrow because obviously we've got the lower bracket games, right? So we've got X10 versus Crazy Racoons. Then we've got Sharks versus Crew, and then that upper semi-final Sentinels versus Vikings. So we got to hear, where you're leaning in terms of those games.
I think Crazy Raccoons crushes X10. Like not even close. I think they get shredded. I think it's a 2-0. I think that Sharks and Crew go to 3 maps. I think Sharks wins, but it's super sloppy. And I think Sentinels Vikings goes to 3 maps. I think Vikings win the first map, and then Sentinels close out the series. I think the Vikings will come out and they'll kind of catch them off guard, and then Sentinels will have to regroup. The first map, though, won't be like a blowout. It'll be really close, like a 13-11.
Okay. All right. We're feeling bullish on Sentinels. I think after today, they've got through some of the brutal stuff. All right, we're going to a break, everybody. And when we return, there will be a reckoning. Mitch McBride is joining the show, our sole European representative, and he has many crimes to answer for. Bring him out. Bring him to the hangman's docks, whatever they're called. Anyway, we'll see you after the break. We'll get Mitch on. We'll talk a little bit more about today's games. Stay tuned. MitchMan of the village of Ireland, you stand before us today accused of a grave crime. The crime of blasphemy against the holy institution of North American esports. What say you in your defense?
Everybody gets lucky sometimes. What can I say? It can happen once. It can maybe happen twice, but it ain't going to happen forever. The bounce back's coming.
What about for 4 maps in a row? What about for
What,
4 maps?
exactly.
what about why don't we shut the fuck up? How about that for a game?
All right, listen, we'll get. Yeah, this is now, in fairness, this is Mitch's tweet, right? So
Cropped out.
Yeah,
I notice.
Yeah.
There we go.
credit,
Okay.
Credit where it's due. Obviously, the plan was to come on Valorant, talk some smack. Obviously, we had Mitch on, and we've had Yinsu and multiple other EU people come on. So fair play. Listen, let's give me the abridged version here. We'll get to go into the games a little bit more in depth, but not a great start so far for Europe, Mitch. So, how you feeling? Thoughts, concerns, feelings, existential crises?
All of the above, pretty much. I think that when I look at these games, like to summarize it, I would say Fnatic Sentinels was a really, really good game. Like jokes aside, Sentinels played really good. I think Fnatic showed up to a decent degree. It was a bad game for them with a lot of individual mistakes and a really slow start before they started to adapt to Sentinels play. I think this was like feeling them out, and it was Fnatic that were forced to change up what they were doing more so than Sentinels. I think they just came in with the A plan and it just kept fucking working for them. And really, when you force your opponents to adapt to you, you're already winning. You've already got your right foot forward. Liquid fucking choked. They played really, really bad.
Don't use those words together, man. That always comes back to them.
I know. This is the thing, man. But it's like, Fnatic and Sentinels, like, even though it was a 2-0, I'll say it was a good game. And I think, like, Fnatic, there were mistakes, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't, like, out of the ordinary. It wasn't something unfounded. It was a good game. Sentinels deserved that victory. I honestly think Liquid should have won that game. I think they just fucking threw it hard. At least on the first 2 maps, they were horrendous. And then the third, I guess they were switched off the whole time. So, I think it's been a really, really good day for NA, and I've cried a lot.
Now, before we we can get into the juicy stuff here as well. But there was kind of a taste tester at the beginning of the day, right? Because we hadn't seen X10. So what I know about teams from Thailand in global esports is that they're always really plucky. They're always really hard to keep down. Like there's a vivacity about these players that is extremely hard to deny. And Pataphan, obviously, I've seen in multiple scenes now, and this is about what I expected. From what I've seen, like these players from Thailand and SEA are jokesters. They're very upbeat, very hard to tilt. You can't tilt them. But Vikings obviously are the top seed from Brazil, and I'm sure we're expecting this to be pretty strong showing for them.
Yeah. Realistically, like when you look at X10, first of all, like just their stage presence was fantastic from the get-go, and I think it just cemented exactly what we kind of thought or think about that region. They are the kind of light, fluffy guys that like to come along and have some fun, and they certainly did. Even in the losses, you saw the gifs go out and the player cams, although they got integrated further towards the end of the stream. But yeah, Vikings, they were a team that came in, and I've heard a lot of good things about them from the region. I'd seen a lot of their games, and regionally, they're pretty damn good. Then you come through to the scrims they've been having with EU teams, and I've heard a lot of good things. I've seen some really good results from them, or not necessarily results, but just the way that they've been matching up against EU teams in scrims has been pretty good. It's not like they're getting, outmatched, certainly in terms of firepower, up against a lot of these guys. So I'm starting to think, okay, you know what? These guys, they can do some serious damage. I see them on a lot of lists as kind of that 4th or 5th place team that could come in and upset some of the bigger ones. For me, NuTurn are like slightly above them, but between the two, it's like it's a 0.1%, like they're very closely matched for that 5th spot and potential upset. But that game versus X10, it was fucking weak, man. Like they did not look good. I think game plan wise, it was good. Like they looked, they didn't look lost, but individually they were just off, and I want to hope that's kind of like LAN, it's travel, it's blah blah blah. Hopefully coming into the next game they're going to be a little bit better, because they're going to need to be.
Right. So I think, Dream, you kind of said this when we had on the show. You were really unimpressed with Vikings, especially with the reputation they come in with and the expectation from the Brazilian scene that's always so dominant in tac shooters.
Yeah, I mean, I was really high on them coming into the event. As soon as they qualified, before they even won the tournament, right? They qualified by making it to grand finals and regionals from the upper bracket. I was already tweeting about how people need to take them seriously and how they're a tournament threat. And I'm not going to delete the tweets because I want to keep myself accountable, but yeah, I am not feeling that way anymore. I definitely agree with Mitch that they seemed like they were not at their usual level firepower wise. Honestly, their normal firepower level is extremely high, and we did not see that today. But there was also this question of the different international metas colliding and how that's going to work.
Right.
And to me, this was an example of, and so was NuTurn versus Sharks, of Brazil's take on the meta not being very effective. I think their lack of Viper on Icebox was very rough. You see here as an example, you know how easy it is for Viper to solo lurk into B site?
Oh.
You know how easy it is for Viper to solo create that pressure? As an Omen, not so much.
Literally crouch walk.
Yeah, it's a little rough, and we saw that a lot. I think that they were fortunate to get the number of rounds that they did, to be honest with you, especially on their T side. I really felt like that X10 has a good idea of the meta and how they want to play their comp as sort of a skeleton, but they didn't have good branches on that, good ideas of what adaptations to make. I think that about 4 rounds in, they should have just started hard stacking A site and saying, if you guys want to play B and you guys want to try and take B while we stall you with our util and you don't have a Viper, good fucking luck. Have fun with that shit, because it won't work. And I think X10 was close to being there strategy-wise. I think they're ahead of Vikings, but I think they just didn't have that fleshed out. I think if they had that fleshed out, they had a little more comfortability. I think they would have taken this first map, and I feel similarly on Ascent. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very worried. I was hopeful that the justification for Brazil having a different meta and their different play style and their fast tempo, ending rounds in 30 seconds, playing really aggressive, I was hopeful that was going to be a good rival and kind of a giant clash with the slower international metas we see in NA and EU. At this point, that is not what I expect going forward. I expect them to be punished pretty heavily.
You know, one of the things I just want to say on that, just to quickly feed off that, is the super aggressive style that Brazil has also plays very well with the kind of post-plant meta we're seeing coming out of a lot of teams, especially you NA boys were taking that to a new fucking level. So I think they have like a lot of promise, but one of the problems I see in that region is just lack of innovation. You know, it's like they had a meta 6 months ago and they're like, right, this is the fucking meta, dude. Like, this is what we're gonna do. And they don't adapt quickly enough, and maybe that's a thing of like necessity within the region. And there's a lot of pressure on these guys, honestly, to perform. Because remember, Brazil right now, they've got 2 slots. If they fuck up, if they play really, really bad, that's going to be reconsidered, you know? I think every region is in that spot where, yeah, you're competing for the prize money, blah, blah, blah. You're also competing to tell Riot, to tell the global esports team, yo,
that we should get more NA spots.
More. Yeah, we want more spots at Worlds, exactly. And I do think Vikings and NuTurn have some interesting parallels because they are both kind of playing their region or their within region style that they've held on to for a long time, but they kind of have one map each where they have a different take, right? And we saw from NuTurn on Ascent, being able to play that Astra style, being able to play slow, being able to have good util protocols. And Vikings has a very good bind. They look like they can go toe-to-toe with, I mean, maybe not Fnatic, but basically any other bind team. They play the Astra Viper. Sure. They have great stall. They have great understanding of map control, of mid-rounding. They'll play patiently. They can absolutely play that style on bind. I do not understand why they don't want to play that style on Icebox. It is mind-blowing to me.
Probably because it's
Sentinels
not
are going to
practiced.
ban bind against them anyway.
Yeah.
But why
yeah.
not
They're going to
practice
play
it
it against them.
If you're going to
Yeah.
practice it on Bide, why not practice it on Icebox? You have so much footage to watch.
Yep.
It's befuddling.
And look at that comp. For the same thing for me, I thought it was crazy Racoon that I was going to say that they played the old school style, but it's pretty much the same lineup here, right? No Viper, no Sage. And we were talking about it with Dream, you and I, when we were watching this. It's like, so Dak, he's playing the Killjoy. Whenever they have a Killjoy ult ready, that's when they hit B. Because
Otherwise, they cannot go.
Exactly. If not, it's always hitting towards the A site. So luckily, in the end, how Vikings kind of pulled that off is just from the sheer firepower and aggression that we know from the Brazilian playstyle. Because even GTN, as at Raze, sorry, I'm a little bit too close to the microphone.
You're fine. I like it. You're beautiful. It's good.
Even GTN couldn't actually get any kills going on right now, you know, in the series, or at least on that first map. So if GTN was able to pop off a little bit more as a duelist, as a Raze, to create that space, again, maybe the way they wanted to create space was also using a utility of Raze, and that's why he was shut down a lot in the beginning too. But if he was able to create space and also able to get kills, maybe just from head-to-head firepower between X10 and Vikings could have pulled off with a wider margin in the victory. But again, as the other two are saying, if it comes down to strategy, composition, and the meta, I don't think they're going to stand a chance if they're not playing as to how they evolved on Buying, right? So maybe they're just a little bit slower for these other regions to develop the meta in these other maps, and it's not fast enough, at least for this event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So explain this to me, because obviously, you know, we're dealing with a lot of teams. Sentinels obviously going to be one of them that want to play post plant. They want to play that sort of Viper setup. Mitch kind of mentioned that like their play style against those kind of teams can have validity. So on defense, you know, if you're playing just the Omen, right? No Astra, no Viper. What is your objective against the team that wants to play the post plant? So like, what should we be looking for from Vikings against a team like Sentinels tomorrow? Because their take is, I mean, we could probably say it's a little bit outdated, or like it's a little bit older school of their team composition approach. So how, if at all, do they handle this like really Astra Viper heavy approach to you sort of getting an easy plant and then sort of controlling the post plant?
Well, I mean, there's a very easy answer to that. Smoker lineups, body block, duh. No, in all seriousness, I had to. I'm sorry.
Shout out to Lothar, big fan, of course.
In all seriousness, there are a lot of things you can do, and I think upping the pace when you're on those retakes is one of them. But the problem with that is, like, if an enemy team conserves their utility and so they can play those post plants effectively, it's very fucking hard to get in there, because if they're playing super far back, they're going to have one or two players up close. They're going to have something to slow you, like Sage Wall, slow orbs, maybe some utility out of a Killjoy. Like, they're going to have something that stops you from pushing very quickly. And when you go out, if they have a crossfire close, if they're not playing post plant, because let's be honest, like, just because you're playing a Viper and a Sova doesn't mean you are always playing post plant. So if you start running in there like a fuckhead going, hey, I'm not gonna let you use those snake bites, and they've got like a 5-man crossfire, you're fucked. You're gonna lose that round. So like, it's very hard to like come up with a one way to just counter this, and it's easily done. But ultimately, upping the pace of at least the information gathering when you're looking at, okay, have they got players on site? How many are they? Are we missing, you know, if there's 5 alive, are there fucking 3 of them on site? Are there 2? Then we're probably looking at it being a post plant. So things like Trailblazer, things like your obviously the Seekers themselves, Sova darts, Sova recon drones, those sort of things for gathering intel are invaluable. And then retake abilities like, let's say, Rolling Thunder, even though Breach isn't used nearly as much as he was before, that just allows you to negate those angles that they can be holding and actually gain some space back, are super important for when you're going in for those retakes, to stop you from running down the clock to the point that some dude just sat in spawn going, hey, I've got a lineup here, just completely ruins you.
I think that's exactly right. I think that you don't know if they're playing for that post plant. They can be playing up with all their utility. They can use their mollies in the choke point when you're trying to enter site. So it's really hard to deal with. They'll have Astra stars to deal with that. I think one thing they can do, because I think a lot of these teams, particularly Sentinels, are very willing to slow the round down and try and punish you if you have that early aggression. I think a big chance that they have is to look for lurks and late flanks, because if you can flank late, then a lot of times you can determine really quickly, is there someone far back playing for this post plant style? Get that info really fast, and then you know, okay, should we fast retake or should we let this flank develop and try and kill the people playing for the post plant lineup style? So I think that's maybe their only option, but that's very map dependent.
Yeah, and I even think like if maybe because Vikings are not used to playing like an Astra meta, where maybe one of their players just like literally mechanically is just annoying or can't play an Astra right now, and they want to keep an Omen. I think going to maybe a single duelist and bringing maybe a Sky in, if they have to play against Sentinels, could be a very good one too. Because when I know we're talking about these pulse plants, but even if they want to play pulse plants on attack or even retakes to try to stop somebody like Tens or like Shazam that's going to continue to push forward with Jet Knives or as Arena, for example, just on Icebox, having those flashes and swinging with those flashes are going to help a lot too, combining with the Silva utility that could come out of that. So with that, it adds a little bit more to the single flash paranoia that they could try to have, that they currently only have, that could maybe help their jet do a little bit more too. I know it's going to get a little bit less firepower because it's only going to be on FRZ as a jet, but if they're able to add a little bit more flashes, it'll help them in terms of like getting a little bit more map control.
So, I mean, I want to circle back around to the meta discussion because I think Sassy touches on that in the interview. But X10, when we go on to Ascent, they play this sort of zero duelist setup, which is honestly kind of not what I expect from them, right? I think, Dream, you touched on the fact that they seem to have like the right idea meta-wise, that they're ahead of Vikings in your opinion, but they sort of, it's not fleshed out. What are they, like, obviously, what are they trying to sort of achieve with this composition? Because this sees Patapan move over towards the Sage, and he's got some bizarre wall plays. Like, you know, he's sitting in mid on defense and he walls up the right side and walks into like B-Link or whatever and just tries to take a fight.
He's playing Jet as a Sage.
He puts a wall up in spawn and just watches mid. Instead of like the Hiko, just like sit in spawn and just like knife peek mid, he just throws a wall up and watches it. It's some bizarre, some stuff I've never seen before on that Sage. He plays well, but it's a very close match. What, it goes in overtime, yeah?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
I think they had a really good idea of how they wanted to play this comp on defense. I think it is a defense favored comp without having that duelist and without having the hard entry ability, right? It can be a little difficult sometimes on the T side, and we saw that a little bit. But on the CT side, they have a very clear idea of what they want to do, and that is not to use the Sage Wall to like block off a lane and then go stack somewhere else or spam slows early to get control of an extremity. They just want to have Patafan play in some goofy ass spot and get a one and done. And that shit works.
Strange.
Yeah, I think it's really effective. I think that we've seen various teams, obviously in Europe do that. Ethan in NA on 100 Thieves has done that. And there's a decent amount of goofy Sage off-angle players in Brazil that play that way, particularly on Ascent. Ascent is kind of the map that's the go-to for this kind of Sage playstyle, in my opinion. But Patafan's still showing some new looks on that. And I think he really proved that he can play a different style on the CT side. I think the team did have difficulty when they couldn't rely on him to just create infinite space on T side for them, though.
Would you not, I mean, would you not rather see the Sage used in a more conventional fashion, though, as in, you know, like to block off those lanes and to, you know, to sort of punish these sort of late rotations? I mean, I don't know. Does it benefit them, I guess, objectively to play it in that way? Because it's weird. I've never really seen it. Obviously, it's still a very close map. Vikings
For sure.
Still seem to have trouble dealing with that.
I think blocking lanes versus Vikings makes sense. I think other teams that play slow will wait out the Sage Wall, so it's interesting overall. But I think it worked for them in this matchup. What were you saying, Mitch?
Yeah, like, I think a healthy balance of the two is important. You know, having like your ability to play pure battle Sage, combining that in with the more traditional like locking down lanes, whether it's early or whether it's mid to late round, plus the ability like to use a wall on retakes, for example. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do with Sage. But I think ultimately it's just a balance. Like, having those kind of peaks where you just run down mid like a motherfucker, that's conditioning your opponents so damn well. Like, when you don't even feel safe in what is effectively your spawn, because maybe a wall comes up and there's like, you're like, oh, they don't have a jet, cool. Oh, fucking Sage is on top of that wall killing me. That's fantastic. So throwing that in is always going to be a good thing for me, just to have that added layer of unpredictability, because you're playing Sage the same way, like in one particular way, the whole map, it's going to become very predictable to the point that, like, imagine if you play lane, they're going to know that you're, to bait out your utility in the early round and effectively make you useless and in what you're trying to do. And if you're playing aggressive, they're just going to wait for you to peek and then kill you. So it's like a balancing act is where you got to get it.
I don't know. I thought it was great. It was really endearing, I think, just to watch the way that he was playing the Sage. Obviously, they're still looking okay, X10, and I think, as we kind of discussed, they go up against Crazy Racoon, so that's going to be an interesting series.
Yeah, that's going to be
happening tomorrow. So, so that's first up tomorrow. So, Vance, are you casting at any point during this whole Masters thing, or what?
Yeah, tomorrow.
tomorrow.
We're doing something finally.
I'm just wondering if, like, casting with me ruined your reputation so bad that they just put you on the talent announcements.
Pretty much.
Well, unlucky, I guess. Yeah.
They keep changing the schedule every fucking day on me and be like, "Oh wait, you casted with Mitch." I was like, "Yeah." It's okay. Wait, hold on. We'll get back to you. Then I'm still waiting for an email to see what the schedule is like. Holy fuck!
That email's not coming, big fella. I hate to break it to you now. Sassy gave an interview at the end of this, and I want to cut to it because we're talking a bunch about the meta and what people's takes are in the meta, and I think Dash did a really good job at sort of trying to get some really visceral reactions. So some thoughts from Sassy after their match against X10. Listen up.
And Vikings coming into this tournament.
I'll be honest, I thought it was easier. It got really tough on the icebox. They got a really good composition against us. They got a really different composition, like based on Brazil. Like Brazil play style is really aggressive, and they have a slow game, as most European teams have, to be honest. So it's really hard for us, but we managed to get a win, so it's fine.
All right, well, actually, I'm going to jump right into a meta question then, since you brought it up, because there's been a lot of conversation. Every region does have a different approach, and analysts have been trying to predict which region's meta is going to be the one to kind of dominate, and whether or not teams will start to adapt to that. Do you think it's going to be best for teams to stick to what they did in their own region, or try and slowly morph into what is considered the best?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question, because the first 3 days we got stumped for everyone.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get used to the slow game. So we were thinking, okay, do we go to this meta, like playing with Sage? Because Brazil, we don't usually play Sage. And then after like 4 days getting stumped, we said, okay, just go Brazil style. We don't have time for it. So we have the mentality that we will keep playing like Brazilian and see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll come back stronger.
Stick with what you know.
There you go.
Really interesting, because obviously, like, over the course of a tournament, you just don't really have, your preparation has to form the bulk of your approach to an event, right? Like, it's pretty hard to pivot, especially in a game like Valorant, where
For sure.
Incorporating different agents or strategies can require a huge overhaul for your team. So, in that sense, you're sort of, if you didn't figure it out beforehand, you're not going to figure it out now. How does that change how we feel about Vikings going forward now? Because we know they struggle with a slower kind of play style. And as Mitch none too charitably pointed out at the start of this segment, that is definitely something that North American teams do to the max. So are they fucked?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes, I think they are. I think that they can still end up in a 4th or 5th place. I think it's going to be really hard for them to reach that upper echelon, which is a shame, because I think they are incredibly individually skilled. I really would like to see them play Bind at least once in this tournament, because they do look really good on that map. But I think against teams that are able to play really slow and are ready for that meta, it's going to be hard, because we had plenty of teams in NA that resisted that playstyle and did not want to play that playstyle and tried to play fast into these comps. And eventually everyone was like, it's just not working. We know how to beat this fast style with this stalling and with this rotation of utility. So we're very prepared for their style that they can bring, or at least a very similar style, but they don't have that similar experience against the meta coming from NA in Europe.
Yeah. And that's exactly the problem. Like, microbiomes right now is the #1 problem for these sort of teams from regions like SEA, regions like Brazil, because you can't practice. So a great point that he made there was, we don't usually play with Sage in Brazil. Now, if you don't play and with Sage, and by this I mean even just the slower comp, if you don't practice the slower comp, you can't turn around in 4 days, 5 days and change it. The game is so fucking
Sure.
complex. You cannot completely shift your agent pool and your play style.
You got to lose a bunch of scrims on it first.
Exactly, dude. You gotta have hella time to play. Then combine that with, not only have you not practiced it, you haven't practiced against it. And that's one of the big advantages I think that we have with the fact that we regularly in EU scrim CIS teams. Like, you play against Gambit, Defo is just fucking disgusting. Like, that, it's horrible to scrim that team. You'll get 5 rounds. Like, most EU teams, and they'll all talk about it, it'll be like, oh, if you beat Gambit in scrims, you're doing something right, because the dudes are insane. And that's one of the big advantages that we have, in that we have like 3 microbiomes who've evolved independently in the official tournaments, but then they all hit up against each other in Turkeys and CIS and EU style, have sort of become blended a little bit each time we have a meta change. They all shift in roughly the same direction, but it's, everybody tries their own thing first, and then we get to see independently, okay, this kind of works. In NA, you have enough high-level teams that have independent, like, coaches, IGLs who are smart enough to push that meta and try to take it. In Brazil, I don't think you have enough teams who are of a very high level, like high enough that if they try a certain strategy, you can't just beat them off of raw aim. Like, you could have a team in Brazil. I'm sure there are teams in Brazil trying slower strategies in scrims and whatever, but they just fucking suck compared to the top level teams, so they get wrecked. And that's not going to make you go, oh, but maybe we should try that comp. Like, no, of course not. You're wrecking it. So like, that's one of the advantages NA has with so many top level teams that EU has, being EMEA and having 2 other regions that are so close by.
Right.
Exactly. It's just a melting pot of skills and perspectives that you don't get when you go to Brazil, when you go to Southeast Asia, although Southeast Asia is a very competitive region, and I think that's why they're a little bit further ahead of Brazil. There, I would put it down to more individual talent being the problem in there, the talent pool they have to go to. So there's just so many issues that you have, and that's why when you bring these guys, like, I guarantee X10, I guarantee Vikings, just off the scrims they've played, not even the officials here in the tournament, if they play 2 games and go out, it doesn't matter. Just off the scrims, they're going to go home and be fucking nuts compared to what they were when they came here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Listen,
Sorry, Mitch.
Oh, you go.
Yeah,
You go.
just to
You
say
go
2
first,
things real
Vince.
quick. The first one is, like, yeah, despite, like, there's a huge melting pot of skill and practice and everything that's going on currently in EU, but it's still not enough for NA, according to today. But then the second one is, for Sharks at least, or sorry, for Vikings at least, they don't have to play with that much pressure, right? So not having to play with pressure is gonna help them a little bit more, be more at ease and comfortable in their lower run, in their further runs, and hopefully a better lower run. But I do agree with the other gentleman that it's not going to be enough.
All right, I'd like to talk about this because I think it's really interesting. It ties into the whole like geographical discussion, as well as like getting inspiration from other regions. But something I was inspired by, I don't know about you guys, was Version1's just stellar performance today. You know what? For 1 second, for just a split second, despite your literacy and numeracy rates being so god awful, for just a moment, I almost wanted to be American. Cartwheel. I mean, straight out the gates already, we're drippy, we're looking swaggy. Version1 come out here, have been the underdogs. They're playing up to the fact that they're the underdogs. Team Liquid, in fairness, are not their sort of. Were they the top seed? They weren't the top seed.
Yes,
from
Liquid is.
EMEA,
Top
right?
seed from EMEA.
Right, they were. So, I mean, we're talking, this team is frightening. They've come a long way. Sliggy's really sharpened this team up. You've got Scream, you've got Yumpy on this team. They're going for it. Okay, so even those that are, look, Vansilli, I know that you went hard in the paint on NA after sort of Yinsu and just got you rolled up. But going into this, what are your expectations? I ask you because, you know, you're a bit defeatist sometimes. And I was wondering if you really thought that Version1 had a real chance here. Because like Box said, they keep getting underrated by people.
Yeah. Yeah, fucking hands down, they fucking had it in the bag, dude. Like, Version1, even
Okay.
after... Look, I'm sticking with it. No, but at the same time, versus Liquid at this point, the map pool, when you looked at it, right, it was split and the 2 other maps. Realistically, when you look at this series, I think Version1 would have had a comfortable win over Team Liquid by sheer momentum if they won the first map against them on split. And how it actually panned out was that they actually lost on that first map,
Right.
where actually Version1 threw the maps. Like we were talking about how I think Dream, you were saying how Liquid kind of threw a couple of rounds. I think it was version 1 that threw a couple of rounds on the first map. Most notably as the amount of times that Zelsis was caught with utility as a killjoy and just got wrecked by Link every single time. And that unfortunately was like, oh fuck, this is gonna hit him going into map 2. And I'm like, map 2, he's gonna play a Phoenix, everything's gonna be fine. And then fuck no, he's still staying as a killjoy. And they're starting to win at the same time. They're playing a great second map. But it was all on the clutch from Effie's on that last round with the shock darts that I was like, it was back in that. What was that time that Effie's got like a recon dart and killed 3 people? Wasn't it against Sentinels or Cloud9? It was against Cloud9 and ended up winning the series to actually qualify, right? Something like that on Haven. I think it was the same scenario right there. Winning the shock dart 1 versus 1, it was like hands down version 1. They're winning the third map and they fucking won it 13-4. So, yeah, my expectation was not as high for version 1, but I definitely thought that the upset potential was there.
Me too. Yeah,
it's a good map to screen.
It's Mitch that started. I just want good games. I just want good games.
I'm just glad. Honestly, I'm just glad we got great maps. Everyone had fun. It's not about winning. It's about having a good time. And
celebrating first land.
Weren't you
That's
flaming
all we need to say about that.
They played like
holiday
shit
team.
and they threw? Didn't you do that a couple minutes ago?
No. Listen, everyone is just great. I love all these players. I love the game. I enjoyed myself and my time, and it was fuck me, man. Liquid was shit today. It was I think it was the first time I've seen Yampy be negative on opening duels and just be negative in general.
He's
like
-4 on split in opening duels.
And it was Zelsis a lot of the time that was just fucking him up. Like he was dealing with Penny. That was the thing, right? Like
Penny too,
that wasn't,
dude. Yeah.
When I'm seeing that, I'm thinking, okay, we got this. And then Zelsis, he's peeking people with turrets one map, and the next time he's fucking destroying. Like he won a 1v4, I'm pretty sure, at one point over on Haven. It was a disgrace. Yeah, for me, like this was Liquid choking a lot, but at the same time, version 1 played a really good game. They played a lot better than I expected of them, and I got to give them credit because I've gone against them. You know, my predictions are out there, and they've been against version 1 every step of the way. So I'm very excited to see that performance out of Liquid. That said, I think NuTurn are going to beat them because I'm just going to stick with not predicting them to win.
I mean, this is cool. We've seen this a little bit before, but the counter Sage wall to come out here. Look, I mean, version 1 are doing some freaky stuff in this game though, like pushing through fucking Viper walls. Oh, who is it? Bloody Penny with the operator, just like on the B side. Just I think we have that actually. We'll probably get up to that clip, but version 1 are playing. So at this point, are they still sandbagging, or are we seeing what they actually prepared for? Right?
This is what they're prepared for.
Oh no, this is real, and I do think to a certain degree, I understand where Mitch is coming from, talking about Liquid maybe underperforming a little bit. I think honestly on Split, I was not impressed with either team, particularly on T side. I'm going to be honest. It felt like on V1's T side, they did not know how to default and deal with what Liquid was doing at all, so they just gambled. They were just like, we're gonna not do anything for a little while and just hit a site and run it and hope we don't run into the op and hope we win our entries. Even when you see that counter Sage wall play, they have no utility with that, and Scream is right there, and 9 times out of 10 he gets a double kill because they're lined up on top of that wall. Like there were a lot of coin flip plays that they were making on T side, and then the other side of that, Liquid on their T side could not deal with the straight up
smoke.
I'm not going to say that word. The very dumb off angles and crazy plays that we saw V1 making, both in early positioning, running through smokes, running through Viper utility. They are saying, if you put down a smoke, you still have to have a gun looking at it. If you molly it, we'll run through the molly and the smoke. The only way we're not running through it is if there's a Sage slow, because we literally can't.
We can't.
Otherwise, we will disrespect all of your utility. We will run through on timings. And they were able to show that on other maps on their T-cell and get fast flanks and lurks and reflanks with really crazy timings. But Split, it's kind of hard to do that. There isn't a lot of fluidity going from the main site hit and then reflanking something quickly in kind of a stealthy way that we saw Zelsis able to do on later maps. So their T side kind of struggled because of that. But I think this is V1 style is kind of the story of a lot of teams right now where
This is the
people
throw round
are
here.
disrespecting utility and saying you can have all of these protocols, but if you aren't on our level aim wise, fuck off. And that's what happened today.
You know, one of the things that I have to give him a huge shout out to V1 for, I genuinely think that they like fucked up Team Liquid, at least in the preparation stages, because all the work that Team Liquid, you know, I'm looking at it from more of my like team analyst perspective and how you would prepare for V1, and they just came in and just gave them the middle finger, like straight up. They added in a Killjoy to their Haven. First of all, like that's going to change a lot in how they defend. It's going to change it. Like you're thinking about their defense now. They've got Astra, who some people use as a little bit of a hybrid Sentinel. They've added in Killjoy just for that extra little defensive ability. Plus, they're playing a fucking Viper. It's very hard to play against that team on either side. It's a strong comp, man. They're playing single duelist. That's not fucking NA. And then talking about that, they went to Ascent. They took out a Phoenix. And you know what they added in instead of a Phoenix? A fucking Viper.
Killjoy. This is not, but they got Killjoy too, yeah.
This is not a North American team.
Let's go to let's cut to Ascent. I think we're obviously we're talking pretty broadly about some of this stuff, but I do want to try and dissect these maps a little bit. Obviously, that play, I mean, it's 12 to 10. V1 have the chance to win that map there, and they just sort of really let things fall apart. They even have a fucking lockdown. I think that just gets blown up. So, but let's crack on it because we have Ascent. Let's talk about this, right? We have the Viper, Killjoy, Astra on this map. That is kind of brutal. And we know that V1 they win the pistol and they win that first gun round, so they get off to a pretty good start here. But I mean, first of all, TL come out, so they're not playing Astra here. Obviously, they're playing the Omen here for Link. I mean, what are our initial impressions when we look at the comps?
I think this was typical TL for me. Yeah. It's what?
It's doo-doo.
I mean, okay, so Dream says it's doo-doo, but I'm like, I think it's not that bad, right? Because I think from watching how TL plays on the execution on A, it's very, again, explosive, going with the double duelist. So Soulcast is going to like owl drone towards the wine side, making sure A is clear. And then you have your Omen smokes on door and potentially Heaven. Paranoia into Generator while you have Nanostorms being thrown at door. And you can really have Yampi dash into site. So the execution there works very, very well, at least for me, for Team Liquid and how they play this map versus others. Because, again, I saw the tweets and I saw the record themselves. They were 10-0 on this map. So as much as we'd like to say that it was it could be a bad comp for having an Omen in there and it looks doo-doo, I still think that it still works for how they want to run their strats. And I think, again, where we may think that V1's kind of giving the middle finger of not giving a fuck and playing and pushing everything against TL. I think TL was also giving the middle finger to Version1 for keeping that extra that same comp actually against them.
You know, like for Version1, adding in the Viper is so huge because I don't think that Team Liquid have played against that on Ascent. Because although it is very strong, like you can definitely play a Viper on this map. You can play a Viper on any map at this point. The reality is like we don't have this in EU. Not a lot of teams run this. And as well, as we said, right, Team Liquid will have prepared for V1 how they normally play this map, which ain't with a fucking Viper. So now all of a sudden we end up in this position where like your preparation goes out the window. You're like, oh shit, they're changing things up. How are they going to do this? You're on the back foot. You're adapting to how they're playing. And Viper, when you add her in as an agent, you have to adapt to that. That's not the kind of change that you can just go, oh yeah, fuck it, we'll play our own game and just go about it as normal. You have to play around her. So that was a huge advantage, in my opinion, to V1 straight off the bat. Like I thought Liquid are going to come in and smash them. I saw the agent select them. I was like, oh shit, okay, this is a little bit different. It's going to be wild. And V1 definitely put in the work there, and I think it paid off just taking Liquid out of the comfort zone that they thought they were coming into.
So interesting point here, E in chat saying that Fnatic ran Viper on this map when they played. But obviously, you were just looking at the minimap there, the Viper wall covers catwalk into tree or in the garden, right? It covers mid, and it covers the push onto the B side as well. Like it actually really covers a heck of a lot of stuff. I just find it really interesting that even though I think it was Penny that gave an interview after, he was like, yeah, obviously, you know, we weren't sure about how like we would, you know, integrate jammies, obviously, considering that Whippy's Viper play was like a huge part of their like success, right? But you can see here that these Viper balls are constantly getting used up in so many different ways, and they get so much coverage, and they're still winning the same way they did with Whippy, I think, which is what's so interesting, right? I think that the climax of this match was pretty insane, and it really encapsulated what V1 were playing to, because I think it's Effie's right that gets these ridiculous sort of shock darts. But isn't there some irony in the fact that I'm pretty sure NA adapted this style from Europe? Were Europe not the first to really play this really post-plant focused style, and that NA was, you know, this was at the time where like NA wasn't using Sage, and maybe TSM were the first to try using Sage, and there was still a lot of double duel. There's a lot of Reyna going on in NA.
Yeah, we were still playing coin flip Jet Reyna all the time, man.
Or Jet Phoenix or whatever you want. Yeah, like that's the thing that really caught me off, man, was this adaptation from V1. Like I had, if you gave me a million guesses, I would have guessed it, because there's not that many options. But if you gave me 2 guesses, I wouldn't have guessed it. Let's put it that way.
This is disgusting. This round, Penny in this round is just filthy.
This was sick. Dude.
He was smart as fuck,
HP.
man. And he dashes across too. Like he gave that momentum to V1 after that one too. Like look at that, gets the kill, dashes across, and he just leaves like fucking vanning. Yeah, they combined had like fucking 40 something HP on like a 3v2 at some point as well, a 4v2. So it was a great round. Yeah, 2v4, and he still won that. So that was super huge for both of them. I still find, I do agree with Mitch though. I think pulling out a strat that is, or a composition that's out of the blue, was not expected, especially when you're thinking that, oh, we're going to Ascent, Zelsis is probably going to play a Phoenix, and we know the NA way of playing the Phoenix. You're farming for the orbs a lot. Even on defense, you're trying to flash peek a lot onto their B side, which it's exactly what Zelsis did when they were playing against another team earlier on in the bracket, right? So they're like, oh, well, they're still going to play the same style, so let's get ready for this. Let's prepare for these B aggression on defender side that V1's going to pull out. And then suddenly Zelsis, he plays a role that Whippy kind of plays, and it add a Viper into that, and that Viper, it created a lot of space for version 1 on their execution too, right? The snake bites weren't really used for the pulse plant; they were mainly used for map spacing, and it worked well for them. And I even think that sometimes Scream ran through the snake bites to try to get a couple of kills. That didn't work.
And that's so huge, is like the fact that you have, because you think of Viper, right? A lot of people would just be like very one-dimensional in their thought about it, like, oh yeah, Viper's a post-plan play. Yeah, you just line your snake bites up. And it's like, there's so much more to it. There's so many different ways that you can play this game, down to agent selection, but then when you're playing the actual game itself. And it's exactly what we talked about. Like, just because someone's running a Sova, a Viper, doesn't mean their Sova and Viper are going to be in their spawn lining up those lineups. Sure. Sometimes they're not. They're there actively defending the site. So it was really like, man, I was so impressed by V1. I think Liquid played bad, but V1 played exceptional as well. And so I don't want to take anything away from them and winning it. Also, Jammies is unreal. I remember Jammies in like the first tournament I covered playing for Team Smoke Easy way back in beta. And this guy was unbelievable. He was the one that made me fall in love with Viper. The reason that I unlocked that agent and started playing her like crazy was because of him on Split. And then we moved into the further levels of Valorant, and he wasn't really around at the top level as much. You wouldn't see his name all the time. Didn't evolve to be like, your top 4 team kind of guy, considering they were dominating NA back in the beta, at least in the very, very early days of it. So I'm so happy, man, that he's been able to plug into this lineup and have a chance. Although obviously it's a shame that V1 didn't get their full roster here. He's done a damn good job.
And 1 week of practice with that team too, right? So I tweeted after that. I was like, yo, good job, Jammies. Because I said, yo, you guys ever heard of Jamal? Because that's his first name. I was like, yo, you ever heard of Jamal?
Oh, yeah, because you're cool like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, no, because then I said, gem all these nuts. And then I said, and then I said, yo, congrats. They got their good run and everything. It's like, yo, we practiced for a week and we're able to pull out these numbers. So super happy for Jammies. I think even back then in the beta days, he was still playing for like Spot Up or Prospect or something like that, right? Like one of those old teams that are trying to find and get picked up at some point, where eventually they got picked up by Beast Coast. So for them to stick around, not break up and whatnot, and of course Beast Coast imploded, for him to get a second chance to play with Version 1 and to still be like a key component and a key player to the team and to current Version 1's current success, I'm super proud of him.
He's going to be a hot product.
Yeah.
I definitely just really quick want to shout out that Liquid, I definitely agree. They had some issues adapting. They had other times where they had a good streak on their T side once they just started fast hitting sites and not defaulting anymore. Good stuff. But even though Yampi dropped like what 31, 32 kills, just absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
The Jet I remember from that map is Penny. Penny had the big clutch rounds, and I definitely agree. Zelsis deserves credit. Jammies deserves credit, but Penny as well deserves a ton of credit for the huge plays he was able to pull out on this map. Absolutely insane performance from Penny.
He gets these across the. He gets two really big 1v2 moments, I think, with knives. Well, we saw that one round. That was actually like a 2v2 scenario there, but he ends up doing all the lifting. Really impressive stuff from him. Let's talk about map 3. Bit of a clown fiesta, so we won't keep it. We won't go too long. Like I tweeted, I think that Liquid could definitely use both of these in that one, but it went wrong. So let's keep it quick. Let's keep it light and polite here because it's pretty painful. But it's a 10-2 halftime score.
Yeah.
You know, can we divine anything from the compositions that we see here? Obviously, it's, you know, we have the Brimstone and the Sky here for TL. So no duelists.
It's another doo-doo comp.
Yeah. Okay, this is where I'm happy my power came back. My power came back. I went on to the Discord and hang out in the green room, listen to Mitch and Hypoc mauled pretty much because it's the pulse plant meta where we were talking about the cheese before. We're like, oh, Viper, blah, blah, blah. She could create space, different ways to play her. They actually cheese it this time. So they actually have Effie's and Jammies on the pulse plant, run all the way towards long A and just fucking throw shock darts and fucking snake bites and getting those rounds. That's where that meme should have came out. Where like, where are the buddies trying to block these snake bites, right? And and I think the cheesiness did come out from version 1 on this map rather. But I mean, they still won it with a 13-4. That was still pretty huge.
Yeah, V1 did really well on the attack. They got onto sites consistently. They won post plants consistently. The second half, I think it was like the second or third last round. I think it made me depressed. It was just sickening. They managed to like sneak a player in between a push, then like 1v4 from Zels. It pissed me off. I gotta be honest. It really pissed me off. And I think Vans can tell you that because he was in the Discord call with me and heard me call them all manner of names. It was filthy. And on that map in particular, I've never seen Team Liquid look that bad. Oh, is this that round? Is this the post plant, like the hard post plant round?
This has to be.
The last round of the half. Yes,
dude,
this is where they do it.
Let's watch it. Let's watch it.
Yeah, this is and this is what we're talking about, right?
Let's have Mitch cast it.
You don't know with this comp if they're playing post planty or not, right? Because the other thing that V1 is doing all the time is they're smoking CT on both A and C site and then running through their own smokes to fight you in spawn. So you don't know what they're doing. And then at the end of the half, they just do this absolutely grimy post plant play. And there's just
there was
nothing
a worse
you
one
can
of that.
do about it.
Yeah, that wasn't even the round I was thinking. That was
there was a worse one of
that. Jeez, they
like three of them melted on the fucking on the snake bite.
Yeah.
You see the problem with this meta in that very round. The fact that you can literally pull somebody off the defuse, then put a snake. No, not even a snake bite. You can use the poison orb and a shock dart, or a snake bite and a shock dart. Then you can use your whatever one you haven't used and another shock dart. Then you can use the poison orb and the snake bite, and it's just like you end up in just this shit. And sorry. Then after that, they can fucking pull you off again because, well, not in that way. Because again, you've got the black hole online. It's just fucking insane. So you have to be on the spike and starting a defuse when there's like 25 seconds left. If you're going to if you're going to allow all that utility to come down. This is where I'm saying, like, the way to counter it is to just run at them like idiots. But what happens if you run at them like idiots and they're not playing post plant? You're fucked.
Yeah.
It's so hard to actually get that, because then, okay, how do we counter it? Early flanks. How do you play early flanks? You push things early. You gain information by playing aggressive. What happens if you play aggressive into a jet op like Penny, who's going to just fucking take you down? And you lose the round. It's like, there's no way to do this.
That is why this comp is a sack of shit, and I will tell you why. because Astra is unbelievably broken on Haven. If you are skipping Astra on this map, you are griefing yourself. And the reason for that is you cannot take that early map control when there is an Astra. The Astra will stop you on CT side from taking any early map control at all. There is nothing you can do. Like Liquid, I mean, to be fair, they weren't even really trying, and they really should have been putting a lot more emphasis on mid, because being able to get that early mid control, get someone pushed down under mid window, break any Killjoy utility that's giving them info mid, and getting those fast flanks behind them, again, can either let you fight those people so they can't do lineups, or tell you there isn't anyone in their spot to do lineups, they're playing close, and you get to make that decision on how you want to play the retake. But they never adapted. They never played for that mid control, which they absolutely needed to do. They were getting railed early on A, railed on C. There was nothing they could do. But they were literally screwed from Champ Select because they did not have Astra on Haven. I think she is extremely good on Ascent, but if you are skipping her on Haven, you like somebody call ESIC. It's like that.
Okay, so I counter that with this. Brimstone. Link plays Brimstone
I like Brim
instead.
on Bind. I like Brim on Bind. I think the Brim style on Bind is good because there aren't these areas that are so critical to control early in the round that can get shut down by just one Astra suck, right? That's why it's so broken on Haven. You can totally deny all A control on T or CT side using one star at the start of the round, and there is zero counterplay. It is broken. And that is why we see Fnatic switching to that jet that we talked about, so they can try and run through the suck and dash through the suck at A lobby on T side to try and find any counter to that type of play, because it is so oppressive. It is so unbelievably oppressive. You have to have Astra on this map.
And even if you have a Brim right in there too, it's not going to work right now too, because you like him on Bind, but if you're going to play against Sentinels or you're going to play against Version1, it's going to be banned anyways. So you have to try to evolve a little bit more with that controller onto Haven. But there's one quick thing I want to add though about Team Liquid. The positive aspect about it though is that I have to give a shout out to Cryptix and to Soulcaz. Cryptix for me, continue to play in the Viper continues to impress me. I like what he was doing on Split, for example, because I always talk about the kit of how Viper could be very strong. As to the poison's full, you put it up, the wall up, and you have a 50 or 30 decay. Their pulse plant, even though it wasn't planted for B main, for them to put the wall up, to run that clock down, and then once the poison cloud, the toxic screen comes down, they throw a snake bite. So the snake bite adds more deniability. Then they're like, okay, nobody wants to run across a snake bite. Then after the snake bite is over, you have about 60 other, in terms of the toxic poison fuel that comes back up, pull the wall back up. So he's using the utility very well to run down the clock on a pulse plant, not necessarily throwing onto the spike, but on space deniability, which I really liked. And for Soulcaz, for me, somebody that has been criticized a shit ton into his Raze play on First Strike. Now that he plays Sky and that type of agent that's going to help out Team Liquid, he's been a whole new player, man. Like, he's as good on Sky as he was on a duelist with Raze, because he could make plays for himself with the fake flashes and the fast flashes to be able to get the kills, but also to help out his teammates on the execution. Like, none of these hits sometimes would have worked for TL if they can, except for this, man. Except for this. So aside from this, chat,
Zero damage, by the way.
the timing on that. I just want to give a shout out to Soul, because you know he got shit on, but he's a great player. And we show back.
No, man.
It happens. You
Oh
know?
my god. I just wanted to say it's not because of that. It wasn't gonna be like, joke's on you, Soulcaz sucks. No, it's like Soulcaz actually. There's a lot of these strats from TL that wouldn't have worked as well on Split if he's not timing those flashes right with the team. So he's been an integral part of how TL executes right now as a roster. So big shout out to Soulcaz on how he's improved.
Yeah, it was his Sova play in particular, I think, that got him a lot of flack at First Strike. Like that death segment we're talking about, I guess. It was after like a shockingly shit map. But it was team wide as well, you know, and that's one of the things I've spoken to him personally on a couple of occasions, just to say, like, dude, the fact that he took that, he obviously initial reaction wasn't great, but he took it the right way in the grand scheme of things, because he got shit on by the community, got shit on by a bunch of people, got an absolutely insane amount of like death threats and DMs telling him that he's useless and needs to be dropped. That's all ridiculous. You know, if someone has a bad game, you make comments about them potentially, you know, roster changes in team, whatever. But to come along and tell a dude like, oh yeah, you need to fucking end your life because you play, like, what are you doing, man? Come on. And he took that and he said, I'm never gonna play that bad again. I'm gonna use this as fuel to propel myself forward. And he did exactly that, and it's really paid off for him. And that's the kind of mindset you need. It's actually the mindset he got criticized because of his initial tweets that he didn't have what it took, and then he turned it around and proved that wrong, which I really respect.
Sorry,
I hope
Silva,
he shares that with the rest of the team.
Well, he's played Silva and Raze because
I hope he shares that attitude with the rest of the team, because everyone's going to need that bounce back ability after how unbelievably disrespected they got on Haven. V1 was just straight running it down, running through utility, fast flanking, re-flanking, taking crazy timings, just had all the confidence that they were going to win 4 1v1s in a row. And if your name's Celsius, you did do that. But yeah, I think that obviously that experience, very good for Sulcus. And obviously we have, you know, Scream on the team, who's a hyper veteran when it comes to the player base that we have in Valorant. So and obviously Sliggy as well, very good leader figure, I think, and obviously helps Sulcus with that whole issue post first strike as well. So I'm confident that they will mentally still be in it and they will still be able to bounce back. I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about if this is now going to show cracks that other teams can exploit. That's what I am interested to see going through the rest of this tournament.
Or if there's even time for that. I think that the toughest corollary of this situation now is that only one European team can make it out of the lower bracket now, right? Is that not the so, and there's a world where Fnatic and Liquid have to play off for a chance to make it back into the upper final, which is that's tough. I mean, that's obviously not a result that you sort of want to see. Mitch,
I mean, I want to see that. It's all good, Mitch, right?
I could see Van's fucking just cocking it up there. I could see it in his fucking face, man. It was coming. Why did I make this guy? Bro. I made this guy toxic the other week, and I thought, oh, this is great. You
unleashed him.
We finally got toxic Vans. It's great. And now it's pointed back at me. I loaded that fucking gun. I'm being shot.
You opened fucking Pandora's box.
It's like a nuclear reaction. Like, I can't get them control rods in. The guy's just look. He's got bloody cat ears now. You're like, he's gonna draw whiskers on his face next. It's gonna be all over. Let's move on though, because we've been we spent a bit of time on that one. Coming into this next map, I think this is probably one of the most hotly anticipated games, I think, of this upper bracket, because, you know, there are no underestimated teams in this game, right? Sentinels had a scare even getting to Reykjavik, and, you know, as we found out, it was because, you know, there was Dapper had in the past taken got a positive COVID test, but that was all sorted out, and they were stressed about it. They subtweeted. It was so strange. And then Fnatic, on the other hand, I think are a team where, I mean, so many people were very excited about the potential of this roster, right? Durka and Magnum come on in, and all of a sudden this team is just looking absolutely insane. Considered, loosely number 2 in Europe, right? But, you know, especially in a land like this, all that stuff can sort of be upended pretty easily. I think I had Sentinels winning this one, but I was expecting it to be incredibly close. And in fairness, it was pretty close, right? Are we disappointed? I mean, obviously you're disappointed if you're Mitch and you lose this one, but I feel like we've got a pretty cracking game of Valorant.
It could have been 2-0 the other way, man. It really could have been 2-0 the other way. The maps were both so close.
If Fnatic knew how to play pistol rounds, it would have been 2-0 the other way.
Okay, I mean, they got one, right? They got one so far this event.
They got one in this event.
I think they got 3. They got 1. I think if Sentinels was able to win their rounds after winning the pistol, then it wouldn't have been close as well, right? Fnatic on both maps lost. They started attack. They opted to start attack on Haven, which was interesting. They lost both their attacking pistols and then won the force buy immediately afterwards,
force buys were
which I think is great.
Force buys were a big thing. Yeah, there were a couple of rounds where they force bought, and we were like, dude, why the fuck are these guys buying? And then they'd get like 3 kills instantly, and you're like, that's why. Okay, cool.
Hell yeah.
It was almost frustrating.
But that's how Sentinels plays too. Sentinels plays that way on Haven as well. Like we always say it in NA too when we're casting them. It's like, if they're gonna be on a half buy with frenzies in a frenzy meta, it's like, I'm still scared because they're playing that like a gun round. So I think both of these teams matched up pretty well against each other too. I just find that where Fnatic kind of they found like the weakness, Sentinel found the weakness for Fnatic on this map of Icebox is the fact that Fnatic weren't really running a single flash at all, and they didn't have any type of like agents that could block out or push Shazam away from his opping position at the A site. That guy fucking destroyed Fnatic trying to get into the A site with that operator. Like, opping on land for Shazam, we've seen it before in his CSGO days. He's doing the same thing in Valorant now. You have to find a way to stop this man, and it's not going to be from body peaks.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dream.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just going to agree. I think you see the tale of two oppers on CT side for both teams. Shazam was popping off, and basically the majority of the round Sentinels won. It's like they won pistol, they won that round. Shazam went crazy with knives, and they won a bunch of rounds that he went crazy with the op. They really didn't win outside of rounds where Shazam was hard popping. And then on it was the same thing when things were flipped. Fnatic wasn't doing very well on their CT side. Sentinels was having no problem getting in, and that they were pushing Durka out of B main with just a drone at the start of every round. And then as soon as Durka buys an op, Sentinels is like, what do? We can't deal with this. He just keeps getting kills. He keeps holding down B main permanently so they can go stack the other site. And once they finally get the op out of Durka's hands, that's when they can close out the half. But to me, this was a story of both teams not being super able to deal with the CT jet ops on the other side.
It's also a good story when we look at Mystic on this map. We talked about the Viper and the lack of it for Vikings, and you just see the impact that he was able to bring to the server playing that agent, especially with his B holds. It was pretty fantastic. But overall, for me, this series was great. I think this was a really good series. I'm not going to take anything away from Sentinels. Like, I'll say with V1 that Liquid choked right here. I don't think that was the case. I think Fnatic found it really hard to adapt to Sentinels, and that again comes back to what I'm saying about microbiomes. But it kind of surprised me because the fact that we had seen Fnatic versus Gambit still performed so well, I thought that, okay, well, they've already adapted to NA because they beat Gambit. That's basically NA. But I feel like NA also brought a different level to this tournament. They've definitely reinvented themselves a little bit, and that served them a lot more so V1. But Sentinels, to their own little extent, you could see that they were ready for Fnatic.
Yeah. This round, this was the big, you want to talk about a Mystic performance, this saved the game. This got Fnatic back in the game this round for Mystic. And I agreed. To me, this was a classic Mystic Viper round. I feel like for a long time, he has been holding it down on Icebox and Bind for Fnatic and having insane performances on these maps on the Viper. And I think they can definitely rely on him in these situations. And he came up big a lot, including the ace we saw earlier, and that spray down right there with the Spectre to kill the Viper as she's ulting, then immediately drop the counter ult to stop Sentinels from hitting 12 on an eco. I wouldn't believe you if you told me that happened, right? If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe you.
And they lost pistol at like 0.02 seconds on the defuse too when he fucking like
off of him popping
flicked a 2-shot like pop, 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 and then like fucking 2 seconds away from even potentially bringing this back to overtime. That's why like I don't think either of these two teams choked. I think both of these two teams stepped up when they had to. Even when you're looking at Haven at the same time too. Like on Haven, even when Sentinels were losing a couple of rounds, they went for a force buy with Marshals, for example. Tens gets a 4K. Shazam, Dapper wins a 4 versus 1 with a fucking Phantom. Like these guys
transfer and that.
Exactly.
We have those clips actually. Yeah, let's roll them. Like
let's check it out.
As well.
They stepped out to play for both of these teams.
This for me, I feel like we got so many Viper comps versus no Viper comps, and finally we got to see them. And fuck me if I wasn't confused as heck, man. Like, obviously, like it's just seeing how these two teams play around the fact that like both of them has Vipers pits, or there's like obviously there's like an attacking Viper wall on the B side that's coming up and going down in these post plant scenarios. Trying to see how like the Mystic round, for example, of him coming back in with his own Vipers pit. In this round, he also has one here. You see that Zoms just goes down, so that Sentinel's Viper's bit goes down. This is how do you who writes the book on how to play these post plants? This is so complex.
It's tough, particularly because of something that we mentioned earlier, which is not understanding. Icebox maybe not so much, but it's just an interesting point that understanding whether your opponents are playing hard post plant or whether they're playing on site and so on is a difficult thing, because if you approach it as if they're playing on site, you don't have time to counter the post plan. Now, the thing about agent comms and why that's so important, especially on a map like Icebox and especially with Viper, is because it gives you so many tools. There's so many different things that you can do. The same setup in terms of like your smokes, where you plant, where you put your wall down, can be used in a variety of different ways. So like looking at one particular execute, the post play, you've equipped yourself with so many different options. And that's the most powerful thing in this game, honestly, is just giving yourself the tools to reinvent your approach round on round.
Of utility, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can you can be reactive with it based on what the team attempting to defuse sort of does. So how are you supposed to find out whether a team is playing for retake or playing on site, like in the early round? Like, how do you get that information when so often it gets starved from you? Like,
there's no consistent way to do it. There's no way that you can say like this is the way you should play an early round versus a given comp, like, because like I said before, if you try to go for early flanks, well, that means you're taking map control early, and if you're doing that, you're adding risk of running into an opper, for example. If you're not doing that, then you're going for heads up play, like retaking from your spawn or something like that. If you do that, then they could have a crossfire, so you have to play slow. If you play slow, well, they could be hard post plant, then you eventually realize they're hard post plant. Oh, no time left, you've lost the round. There's so many things, like as we said, there are ways around it. Rolling Thunder, for example, if you're retaking A side on Haven, pop a Rolling Thunder. Now those crossfires are ineffective. You can jump out immediately and claim site control and now deal with the post plants with more aggressive plays. But there's ways they can counter that if they still have their killjoy mollies. And it's just, there's so many if, ands, or buts to go about in it that there is no consistent correct way to play around. That's the hardest thing about Valorant, in that there are some elements of RNG to your round approach.
For sure. It's very read heavy, I think. But you could also see on this map in particular, the power of the jet op. It's very, like, it takes literally no utility. You just start off as jet already posted very deep on where the attackers are going to come from, either A or B. You will just always have tons of information. And that is when it gets infinitely easier for the defense, because they have so much info, and no longer are you pushing up and creating this big risk, right? You have a very advantageous fight, you have plenty of info, and then you can stack the other site, and then you don't even really have to play retake. Or if they come to where your op is, obviously you get to force a lot of utility out of them, if you don't get a pick outright, just for them to force your op off of the angle. And again, then you have time to rotate in, and you don't even have to play retake, right? So that's the power of the op, kind of lets you circumvent that problem entirely in some rounds. But I mean, really the only other thing you can do is hope you get a big lurk. We did see a couple of times Tens get good plays with the Reyna going for a reflank, and that allowed them to get some space. But that's about it. You really just gotta feel like, okay, based on what utility they have, I think they're doing this. Or last time they played here, I think they're gonna be here. And you just gotta go for it. Hope you've got some flashes or a dart or a drone, something to give you some space, and just take some ones and hope you come out on top.
That's something that really perplexes me, actually, just talking about what utility they have left, for example, is why we don't have coaches being able to speak during the game, because it's impossible as a player to keep track of, like, oh, they've used 2 shock darts here, they've used this. Like, you can do small things, absolutely, but to keep track of overall what is being used in a round, what's remaining, how long is left on an Astra Star, things like that, like, your coach will have a good idea. That it still won't be accurate, they still won't know 100%, but they'll have a good read. Whereas, like, when you're playing, there's no way, absolutely no way, that you can keep track of that in the majority of situations. And I find it then very hard to sort of justify having a coach not speak, because the level that you could increase the game to, and I said this in Counter-Strike as well when they passed the ruling there, although with coaches being fucking scumbags, I suppose that's reasonable, but we don't have that in Valorant, at least for now. So I would really like that to be a thing, because I think having that sort of like assistant IGL in a way, just to call out those more important things, can be really, really valuable. But I guess maybe things will change. Like, I'm hopeful whenever we go away from kind of the online era, when we start moving towards more consistent LANs and events like this, that we'll hopefully have like a reconsideration of that rule, or maybe clarification on it. Maybe there's a very just reason for it to be that way. There's also the suck we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You were talking about Dream. It's so fucking annoying to deal with on the defensive side. You're trying to drone, you're trying to recon,
Can't get
you're
that
trying to peek
info
it.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not a chance. You're fucked.
Yeah.
So this is Sentinels win the pistol, right? And they actually ease into a decent streak. I think they win 5 defending rounds in a row, and you see they're pretty comfortable using, just sort of sitting back and receiving these pushes here coming from Fnatic. You want to get, I think, it's like a 10-4 half. Sorry, a 8-4 half. It's
8-4, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, not a great look for Fnatic, and looks like Tenza's getting a bunch of clutches, especially early on in this map. But it definitely seems like
later. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a risk of the game getting taken over in the same way as it did in the Liquid series.
To me, I really felt like so many of these rounds came down to the tiniest things. Small pathing things, just winning out duels, getting there on a timing. It really felt like Sentinels was retaking impossibly fast in some of these rounds. And they were just getting there so fast. And Fnatic, it was just an all-out brawl on site. And it's just who is hitting their shots, who is trading, who is just in the zone. Here we see an example of, again, Sentinels getting there really fast off the plant. This is one of the rounds where Fnatic is able to weather the storm and does get one of their wins on T side. But it felt the same way, honestly, on Sentinels T side, that Fnatic was constantly fast retaking into them. And I think there's a long discussion on why that is, on not being able to deny info, not being able to sell fakes that well because of the info the other team does have, because again, you're not denying it, etc. But really, when you are having these constant fast retakes, it does just come down to raw gunfights. And Sentinels just came up bigger on some of the rounds that they really shouldn't have won, where they were down numbers. And to me, that's what swung this map more than anything else, is just winning in situations they really didn't have any business winning.
You know, one of the things I'll say,
He's so sick.
a really big thing for me in summarizing the difference between these two series of Fnatic and Liquid is that, like, from a viewer perspective, like, oh, okay, both games were good. You know, they were exciting. The casting was great. It was just fun. But from an analytical perspective, the Liquid game was hell. I found myself frustrated a lot of the time watching that, where like rounds are lost. You just sat like, you shouldn't be fucking losing that. Whereas on the other side for Fnatic, pretty much every round was like gold. It was just good Valorant on both sides. Like, sure, there were some things like Tens with the Marshall it was just stupid. This dude, I think in this round he gets like 4 headshots.
Stops the defuse,
right?
Look,
It's fucking disgusting, man. It's disgusting. Like rounds like that, even then, it was just like, I don't think I would come back and go, Fnatic, what the hell were you doing? Like, okay, someone didn't shoot the recon. If they did, they win that round. But that is acceptable in the chaos of what was going on. Like, it's not something that I'm going, oh, how the fuck did you lose that? I'm just like, wow, that was a good round. That was really good by Sentinels. Tens capitalized every single duel that he was offered. He got 4 headshots with a Marshall. What do you do against that? There's a couple of things that where Fnatic could have won the round, but they didn't. And that's how rounds go, right? It's acceptable and it's great. And I've really, really enjoyed this game, other than the fact that Vansilli was being a cocky dick in the Discord.
I didn't do shit, man. I was just sitting there minding my own business. You're the one that was just going fuck. So I was just adding on.
I opened my Twitter afterwards and I saw some shit from you. So don't
I mean,
we could have averted this.
Didn't you see the tweet that you put?
Vansilli lie, you know what I mean? If we didn't prod him and goad him and cajole him, we've actually, what we brought upon ourselves now, we can't put it back.
Oh man!
Oh my god!
Mitch, dude, I have to find this other tweet, the one where he does the EU peak versus NA peak. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but that one has to come up because that one was trending. That one was trending.
Listen, you have to do this. Like, you have to commit. You can't just be like losing one map, be like, oh well, maybe we might be fun. You know what I mean? Like, shit.
Oh, of course.
It's literally like you're facing down, who is it? Like
I've learned.
Xerxes and the Persians, and you're 300 Spartans, and they're just like making it rain with arrows, and you're just like, all right, brothers, let's go into the breach.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, okay, so but that's great though to sort of hear that. At the time, I was feeding in Overwatch for the pleasure of our viewers at the time. So going back and watching this is going to be a ton of fun. But it is also nice to feel like we get the match that was promised, right?
Yes,
Something that comes close to living up to that NA versus EU rivalry. And look, there's all the potential that we get to see that again, especially after one of these EU teams is galvanized by a potential lower bracket, run through.
Exactly.
That's least...
And we were talking about that a little bit earlier, right? Which is all the NA fans are obviously over the moon today and super happy with our success, right? But let's be a little slow to rub people's noses in it because the tournament isn't over yet. Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Zelsis got caught with an alarm bot and it turned out a
like
lot
5
on
times.
Split.
Of course.
That shit hurted. I will not lie. He definitely came up well later in the series. But I think that Liquid and Fnatic can both still easily win this tournament, right? Easily. I think that it'll be harder than it is for the NA teams because they're both going to make winners finals, and that is obviously a much easier path. But we got to be a little careful, deciding we're the best region already and rubbing people's noses in it, because just like some of that trash talk came back around to Mitch, in a few days, that might be coming back around to us. So let's...
Fuck that shit, man. NA all the way, number 1 and 2. You stick with it, you go with it. I've learned from it, so fuck you, Mitch. We're going. NA number 1, let's go, cat ears, woo!
I will say, if NA gets first... If NA gets first and second, you guys are gonna hear that shit until Worlds is called Champions, right? It's gonna be
Champions are
hell for you motherfuckers if NA gets 1 and 2.
Vansilli, do you want to
enjoy the moment?
Do you want to double or nothing, Vans? Are you feeling spicy?
Doubling or nothing, man. Sentinels versus Version 1 grand finals. It's gonna happen at this point. I'm not even stuttering. I just stuttered when I said that, but I didn't stutter when I said Sentinels and fucking Version 1 number 1 and 2.
We're stuttering, but not in the important part.
Exactly.
I think we're fine to talk about it. The two of us are on the desk for that finals, and I fucking hope it is not Sentinels versus V1 because he will
only
be
have one life to
insufferable.
live. You gotta live in the moment. You gotta enjoy every fucking little victory.
Like you're from Carlsbad, California. Like you're going off the fucking deep end. Oh, bro, man, I'm just living, man. I'm 37.
Yeah, dude. Fuck it.
I've got
enjoy life.
Some dumbbells behind me, man. I just put the screen in the way. I've got a dog that looks more like an Ottoman. You know what I mean? Like that's just life, man. I'm just out there.
Damn, you got the dog into it,
every
bro.
single moment. Every single moment, loving it.
I love this new leaf you've turned over, Vans. I hope it doesn't get smoked when it comes to the finals. Let's listen quickly into what Shazam had to say, because he attests, I think, to how close this, especially that first map this series was. So let's hear some of that interview post match from Shazam.
It feels good. We definitely got some motivation watching V1 take down Liquid. Had to do it for NA, but it's relieving because it was a really close game. It was a stressful game. They're a good team, but I'm happy we closed it out 2-0.
All right, let's talk about how the games broke down. It started off on Icebox. That was Fnatic's pick. It went 13-11 your way. But I want to talk about it half by half, actually, because first half felt very back and forth. One round going one way, two the other, and ended in 6-6 fashion. How did you feel first time out on the LAN and warming into the matchup and, this specific one?
Yeah, first half was definitely back and forth. I think there was an adjustment period for us, getting used to the audio, and I realized 6 rounds into the first half that all my graphic settings were on high. So it was just getting warmed up. I feel like we're reading them well, but just some sloppy rounds. But we have really good mental as a team, so we know, even if we throw away some rounds we feel like we should have won, we can definitely close it out in the second half.
Get those extra pixels off my screen. I hear you. All right, so second half, all of a sudden you guys just fire off 5-0 straight off in the second half. I mean, what happened there? Did you just find your groove? You feel better on the attacking side? What was that about?
I think we just had a really good read on them. They played KRU on Icebox the day before, and so our preparation, a lot of stuff that they did there was pretty similar, and so just good reads. Beyond that, people just getting the trades they need to and warming up.
and then we kind of gave them a string of rounds.
I was gonna say it went 5 the other direction immediately to kind of even it back up. So where was your head at that point when you're tied up 11-11?
It's a typical Sentinels play. Is we get close to the match point and we start to try to force the issue, like throw rounds that I feel like we have good reads on, but they got some good timings and they played well. Good adjustments. I remember like getting flanked twice. They were just reading us too. So it's fine. As long as we close the match out, I'm happy.
Yeah. Be honest with me. The .02 round, it was the pistol round that kicked off that second half. You guys had to have been losing your minds there.
Yeah, every game I feel like we have some crazy diffuse or close round that just like, you know, once we get the round, there's just like a sigh of relief on everyone. So yeah, I'm glad it went our way.
I mean, hey.
I mean, there it is. I think, yeah. I mean, those are real concerns. You're hearing from a guy who's played a ton of LAN as a Counter-Strike player, and yeah, even he doesn't always change his graphics settings. I think it would normally be like the same protocol as the EULCS. How, I mean, we did it whenever I play these stupid talent show matches for the league where I get dumpstered on and people love it. We basically get the hard drive. If the hard drive's in the PC, we change all our settings and they just hot swap out the hard drive and put it back in for us after. So it's all preloaded. But you, as a Shazam, even as someone as seasoned as he is, like has those jitters, has those things that he doesn't always account for. Most you probably noticed, but pros don't really play on the high settings because they want their performance and they don't want any of those other elements here. But let's have a look at the rest of this week, right? Because all hope is not lost for EU. NA looks pretty strong, but there's still a ton of games to go. So I mean, just at a glance here, I think we talked about this, but tomorrow we're going to be handling some of our lower bracket games. So X10, Crazy Racoons, Sharks and Crew, and of course we get that Sentinels Vikings game tomorrow. What are your expectations for the Sentinel Vikings game? I mean, we haven't heard about it from Mitch, but I think we already talked about it. We feel like it's going to be pretty one-sided. And then, who's going head-to-head in the finals? Let's get some Preds.
Well, I mean, it's Sentinel upper bracket we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
It'll be Sentinels and NuTurn, I think. Again, I'm gonna follow my tendency of not predicting V1 because Imi got annoyed at me, so I'm gonna just keep down that road. But I actually do think NuTurn are a really good team, and I've got a chance of taking that. What I will say as well is, quick thing that Michael Jordan in Space Jam, the Mighty Ducks, and Fnatic, they all have something in common. They start out, things don't go their way, things start to look kind of bad. But
then it just start quacking.
They make that huge comeback, right? All the way to the top. Everyone doubts them. Everyone thinks they're out. But it's all for the viewers, man. Everyone loves a comeback story. That's exactly what Fnatic are doing here. They're putting on a show. They're going down. They're giving Sentinels a little bit of confidence. They're going to come back and smack them. I can't wait.
Look, I don't know you to be so idealistic, Mitch. This is a different side to you, to be honest. Okay, so all right, so I don't blame you for saying that. I mean, shit. I mean, at least one of your EU teams, but you got to say goodbye to one of them. So before you even get to see the European teams go head against these NA teams at the top, you're gonna have to get rid of one of them, which is going to be tough. But hey, that's fine. Dream and Vans. Which of these EU teams, if any, make it through the lower bracket? What are your thoughts? Because it's a long run. They've got, crikey, 3 games, I think, in the lower bracket to play to get out of it. That's 0. Oh,
yeah,
spicy.
I think Fnatic will get to the lower bracket final and lose to V1. But I think Fnatic will make it like close to through the lower bracket.
Okay. So you think that either of them will handle NuTurn, right? So
yeah, I think V1 and Fnatic will both be able to deal with NuTurn. Yes.
Okay.
I'm with you there. There's a possibility, but V1 beating Fnatic, I want whatever you're smoking. That's some good shit.
I think that it's a bad matchup for
legal in Canada.
This European play style. I think that Mystics Viper is a really big part of their success, and V1 is just going to run through all of his utility and say, we don't give a fuck, and Fnatic is going to have a hard time dealing with that. I think that there's just too much dumb timings and just weird places and genuinely bad plays that V1 makes, so you don't expect them to make it, but it's just what they do and it works. And there's not
so
really
like
anything you
challenges
can do
to
about it.
Immortals, or challenges to Luminosity rather, with like Thief with these stupid like timings, like solo
or
playing on
FaZe.
Icebox, and just I like FaZe.
Yeah, it's just
Super
the
sad
NA
for
thing.
Thief, by the way. Yeah, sad for Thief. Sad for Thief, but.
Vansilli or Van Stupid, as you're starting to become as the show goes. Let's what are you expecting for this lower bracket? Which of these EU teams
now
gets
Van
out, if any?
smart as fuck.
Where's this guy come from? This is not Vansilli.
I love this guy,
He's a
man.
dad joker, really, but he's not anywhere close to conceiving a child. That's the
He's
crazy
all
part, you know?
colorful in the V1 merch. I'm just loving the vibe.
Yeah.
Right? We're all living in
Feels
the
like-
moment.
This is like you announced that you're doing Masters, but you already been sat on the fucking beach drinking mojitos all day. You come in like half cut, little bit of a tan, a bit red around the face,
That's
and
a
then
golf tan.
you're vibing.
Yeah,
You got the
my
Juniper's
villa.
hat on and all. What do you reckon? What do you reckon before we close this up?
So if it's gonna have to be a European team, which one's gonna go further? I'm gonna have to give it to Fnatic at this point. I thought it was gonna be Liquid after watching their run in Europe to qualify into this, but after seeing their performance versus version 1, it was back to the good old Liquid, unfortunately, where it got stopped at some point. Now it's a reality check. Now they're gonna have to try to fix things. Who knows if they're gonna be able to? And Fnatic just looks a little bit more complete at that point, but. Not going to go further than actually make it to the third place. So they're going to lose to version 1. They're going to lose to version 1.
I think so. I can see it from Mitch's perspective. It's like the quote unquote the now top team in EU losing to like the second seed from NA is probably going to be that's the nail in the coffin, right? It's one thing for like Sentinels to win, but
I always said that Fnatic were the top team coming into this. They lost
I
one
agree.
series
Okay.
to Liquid, but Fnatic are our fucking
are they
gladiators.
the top team
still.
now? Are they the top team now, in your opinion?
In Europe?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
Like FPX probably would have taken that title, I'll be honest, but they didn't make it. So I'm going to go with Fnatic.
But currently not the top team in this bracket because
that goes
they're
without
in the
saying.
lower bracket.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I think so. I could see how it would be. So obviously, it's one thing for your top team to lose to NA's top team, but for your top team to lose to NA's quote unquote second seed team, which we don't even know if that's the case, would probably be too much to bear. I'm quite sure of that. Yeah, I can't wait for your Medium article where you just drop the bomb on the big figures in esports and then you leave.
The reality is, Liquid choked. That's a normal thing. They're on brand. They're on point on that. And Fnatic, there's not a fucking chance they'll lose to V1. And if that comes back to bite me in the ass, I'm going to be very upset.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to tweet anything beforehand, right, Mitch? Because you kind of learned your lesson this time.
Tweet like a motherfucker because I'm so confident. Fnatic are going to smash V1. They're not even going to get a map. They're not going to get a map. Maybe they do if they get completely lucky, but come on. Mystic's going to
I don't know about not getting a map. I will say Fnatic is definitely really good in the BO3s. Today was the first BO3 they've lost in a long fucking time. The reason they're bad at BO5s is because their map pool is kind of shit. But the maps that they're good at, they are very good at, and they can obviously have a lot of control over that in a BO3. So I think even if Mitch is by some chance right, that they're somehow able to make it out of losers bracket and into the grand finals against Sentinels.
Win the grand final, yeah.
They have literally no chance against Sentinels in a BO5. Their map pool against a team like Sentinels it's just a map pool issue only. Like, I am not worried about any other element. There is no way that they can win with a map pool in a BO5. I think in a BO3, they play a BO3 against them 10 times, they probably win 4. But in a BO5, they play 10.
Yeah.
In a BO5, they play 10, they win 0.
I love this.
EU BO1's coming back to bite you now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the exact same.
It's true.
It's literally the man who just said, let's be very careful not to say we're the best region. And then 10 minutes later, not a fucking chance that they win that BO5. Yeah, you win one fucking day. One day and NA just goes fucking wild. We're the best.
Are you telling me Fnatic is going to win split against Sentinels? Is that what you actually think, Mitch?
I didn't say that. They will win a BO5. They will win a BO5, okay? One map ain't the end of it, all right?
Okay.
Are you telling me Sentinels are going to win bind? Come on. Get out of here.
Okay, 3-1, my guy.
That's
Oh, I can't wait to
Okay,
clip this and tweet it at you.
Let's put a bow on this one. First of all, obviously, guys, we're running a giveaway right now. We are, because, you know, let's be honest, just fucking follow at Valoranting. It's really easy, but if you want to get something to do it, then fine. Follow us at Valoranting. Give us a like, retweet this post on screen. You can't actually click on this screen. You'll need to go to the actual link, which will be put in chat for you. It's fairly straightforward. And comment on your favorite Play Valorant skin, because we have like a segment at the start of every show we talk about skins. We'll probably use that data to poll, or maybe we'll curate some of your Google search things. It'll probably pop up in your sidebar months later that, you know, you spent too much money on Valorant. We're just going to give your data to big corporations to try and sell you stuff. We're going to make some money off it, but you might get a gift card. That's great, right? So feel free to enter the competition. And yeah, do give us a follow, because we're doing this every week. And as you've seen, we get a cast of very good looking star-studded sort of pundits from the scene who get some great conversation. Guys,
And Vansilli.
thank you so much. Yeah, and Vansilli, yeah. Vansilli and the Ottoman. Yeah. Look, it's been a pleasure to have you guys all here. Next week, I mean, we'll be back here next week, and there's going to be a whole tournament to break down. So I'm looking forward to that.
Ooh, let's
Big
get
shout out
Mitch
to
back
everybody.
on too.
Yeah.
I think.
Want me to
listen,
rub
if
it
he's-
in? Sure.
If he's not tried to drown
Mitch and
himself in the shower, then we'll definitely bring him back after that one. And you in the chat, please be back for that one, because that's where the sparks are going to fly, because that's where the writing's going to be on the wall. But until then, enjoy the rest of Masters. Vansilli is still looking to try and keep his pride going, as NA are standing strong. We'll see you guys next week for more Valoranting. In the meantime, enjoy this fantastic global land for Valorant.
Hell yeah.